Hello and welcome to the B&B Show. My name is Brandon Kane. My cohort here to the left, that's Seahawks Brendan Nelson. And we are kicking off. We did it a couple days ago. We're going to continue, keep rolling along. Our real deep dive into this draft, going position by position, looking at these guys, who's the Hawk fits, who we really like, where we see these guys going. I love this time of year. Brendan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm ready. I'm ready to hit it, man. We're in the month now. It's the month. It's the month of officially.
Locked in is exactly right. It's just you start to feel like, okay, it's getting real. It's getting closer. We're 3 weeks out. You know, things are really starting to slide together and you're getting a better understanding of these guys at this point, rather than just your cursory look, if you will. And today we're going to be taking a close look at the defensive tackle position, Brendan. And this is a very interesting one, I think, from our perspective, and taking a look at this first before we get into the individual players, being that we know, don't we, that the Hawks really do have kind of a specific need and almost a double down need at that a little bit as we enter into this, specifically for the nose tackle position.
Right. As of right now, this team has some really good players on their defensive line, but I don't know if they really have a nose tackle. Maybe Jaron Reed's a nose tackle, but we don't seem too comfortable using him that way. Byron Murphy can play nose tackle, but it's clearly not where he's meant to be playing. So this is actually pretty darn binary right now. The Seahawks are very, very good with that 3-tech position or 4-eye position or whatever you want to call it, however you want to silo it out here. When it comes to that, you know, they've spent a lot of money. They've spent big resources. They've spent a lot of attention and focus. And I think they do have a very nice crew of 3-techs. But when it comes to that nose tackle spot, I think there's just a little bit wanting here. I think we need some serious assistance there. And look, in the modern NFL, they often say nose tackle has become a deprioritized position. I don't know if that's really going to be all that true going forward. I feel like the running game is making a little bit of a comeback here, and nose tackle might be more important now than it's been in a little while. So don't discount the position just because of recent precedents.
No, indeed. And I think some of the thing with that being devalued has, don't you think, to do a little bit with the fact that there's so few rare humans that are 6'4", 340 pounds that can move with some ideal length and what you'd like to look for that position. These guys just don't come walking off the bus by the dozen, if you were.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's got to be some new meta to counter the tush push, right?
There you go.
A better counter for the tush push than putting some 400-pound guy in the middle there. So they're back on the menu. We need them. If we could get any sumo wrestlers over to the States, see what they got.
That's the new equivalent Tom Cable defensive tackle to offensive line transition, is now we just go get the sumo guys for the one techs, the nose tackles, because they're getting bigger over there. Yeah. Well, an interesting part of this, as much as nose tackles are going to be the forefront of what we're looking at here a little bit, as far as the guys we're going to be most interested in, part of what's going to be fun with me going back and forth with you on this, Brendan, is going to be kind of getting your read on the 3 techs that we are going to bounce through and how much drive there could be on that, where it's like, well, the talent's just so good. I know we're stacked 3 deep, but the talent's just so good, but we are stacked 3 deep. And I think that's a little bit of the interesting game at play here, don't you, from the Seahawks perspective, on if they do fall in love with one of these 3 techs, especially in the upper reaches portion of the draft.
And it would be really hard to pull off, right? Like, you can't really move any of the guys that you have realistically. You can't move Leonard Williams, and he's too good anyway. You wouldn't want to move him for anything. And Murphy, you just drafted him a year ago, and I know he didn't have a great rookie year, but he was fine. And I think we can all generally agree that he's got a bright future ahead of him. And you just gave Jaron Reed a significant 3-year contract. So there's not really a lot you could do there. Now, I guess that there is that thing we talk about sometimes where we go, what if you move Jaron Reed to nose tackle, which I think would be a pretty cool idea. I think you've kind of expressed interest in trying to do that. Is this team willing to do that? That's a little bit harder to answer. So
we thought we were going to see it 2 years ago, and it hasn't really come to fruition. He's giving very much a smattering of snaps the past 2 years since coming back to the team. And that was really what we thought was going to be the forefront of what he was doing coming back to. He's been a good player, so it's not been bad in that role.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. Well, we're going to get into this, folks, today. We're going to drop right on into this look of things. And we're doing this a little bit different than we've done in years past. In years past, we've gone end to end and from first round all the way to seventh round. And what we'd rather kind of try to do here is stay to more of our top 4 rounds of guys, because there's enough defensive tackles to pick through there. And just frankly, on some of the guys you're looking at this year, especially into the sort of the 5th round range of things, I think these guys are just kind of also rans in a lot of ways. Is one of the reasons this draft is looked at as being a little bit weaker, but we just kind of want to also, folks, give more of a concentration onto the prime guys and discuss them a little bit more. So with that said, Brendan, let's get into the first guy off the board, which for me is one of my rare blue chip players in this draft. I've got 6 blue chip grades. I haven't asked you how many you've handed out. I'd like to know. But I know you don't really maybe do that as much, but in just general terms, if you could. But Mason Graham, the Michigan kid, the defensive tackle, part 1 tech, part 3 tech, all football player. What do you think about Mason Graham? And before that, how many blue chips do you have right now in this draft? Difference maker, all pro level type guys.
I might go like 7, I think. I haven't done everything yet, so don't hold me to that quite yet. Right?
Is Mason one of those guys?
Honestly, I don't think so. I do think that he's a top 10 player in this draft. I do. But my thing is, as I was looking at Mason Graham, there's some stuff about him that is very clearly really great. He's very quick out of his stance. His read and react skills are very good. High motor. No one questions his effort. Pretty good at holding his ground. He understands leverage. He is a little bit of a taller guy, but he knows how to get low, which is a rare skill with these guys. I've noticed a lot of these linemen, they don't know how to get low. Mm-hmm. And that NFL reality hits them like a sack of bricks because they're so used to being able to get away with that in college. Can't get away with that in the pros. So there is definitely stuff to like about him. And I can understand why he does get a blue chip grade from so many places. But he does have the short arms. His arms are actually 32 inches flat, which is very short. That's that couldn't help but disappoint me a little bit. I don't think he's great at holding his ground against double teams, so I don't know how great of a nose tackle he's going to be. I also don't think that he's going to be a great pass rusher in the NFL. I think he'll be kind of a grinded out pass rusher. I don't think he has a bunch of moves. I don't see him being, some elite interior rusher, at least not immediately. And there is something to be said for the stacked defensive line you got to play on college. You got Ken Grant on one side. You got Josiah Stewart on the other. Yeah, Stewart on the other side. You've had other great players on that defensive line as well. So I think he's going to be really good, and I think he has a really high floor. I'm just not sure if I see him becoming that all-world player that some people seem to think he's going to be. Like, I think to myself, is he going to be able to rush the passer at a Aaron Donald or Fletcher Cox type clip? And I feel like the answer is no. And then I'm like, okay, is he going to stuff the run like a Christian Wilkins? And I still feel like the answer is probably no. So I'm like, okay, he's going to be really good in all areas. I don't know if I see the greatness. I got to be honest.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair to, he has got a lot of all around good stuff. There's not a real major deficiency to his game. Is there also a part of his game that's really, stands out in that dominant way? I think the dominant side for me is that he's just an ass kicker for the position. This is a guy that's going to spend most of his time at 3 tech. You're right. You're probably not going to do as much nose tackle stuff with him at the next level. I think he can give you some smattering of snaps in that way. But he is a guy that you put him one-on-one against a left guard as a 3 tech to me, and he's going to kick that guy's butt, especially when it comes to the run game. You're not going to move him at that point. He is very instinctive. He can knife into the backfield in that way as well. He keeps him off guard with the power to how he uses his agility. Very smart player in addition to this, high motor. He reminds me a lot to me of I don't know, this might be too old of a reference on this one, but Justin Smith. It's a little bit of a different player for a different position with the San Francisco Niners.
Oh, that was the Niner guy who was always like grabbing people, and Tom Coughlin like pointed out that he's always like holding offensive linemen, and Harbaugh got mad. That guy? I remember that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a great player. And an absolute guy that just, you didn't want to block. If you were in there for a whole day and you were going to have to deal with him, whether he was dominating or out there creating a ton of pressures, or just, he was a problem on that defensive line for the Niners. And it was, I see the same thing with him, because I think your points are valid, and wondering a little bit about where he goes upside wise as far as really reaching that supreme upside, or whether or not it's just extra good upside, but it really is such a high floor to me on this one. I mean, it is, to me, as high up as you get as any defensive tackle in this draft to me, as far as the floor goes. And that floor to me is legitimate in what he's going to bring. Is it going to be dominant? Is it going to be upper end? I don't know, but I do think you're going to get a good all around player that, nobody on that offensive line is going to want to deal with. And you can move him around a little bit too. I think he can do occasionally some edge stuff early down, 5-tech type stuff if you need him to do that type of thing too as well, and really hammer the edge. So I love this guy. I do have him as a blue chip guy. I just think you turn on the tape. The short arms are worrisome too as well, but you don't really see him having the short arms get exposed on tape. Yeah, they are an inch shorter than you maybe like, but it's not as bad to me as what you see from him as far as like it being a real problematic part of his deal. Partly because, like you said, he does a good job with the leverage side, getting up under the pads off the ball.
Yeah. I do think he's a top 10 player in this draft. I'm not sure I'm top 5 though, like a lot of people have him.
I do have a blue chip grade. Do I have him as top 5? It's probably top 6, 7th is about right. About the right, feels the right range for him, for me too. So we're probably pretty close on this, all things being equal. And I wouldn't rarely give the blue chip grade out to a guy where it's not the taking into account the ceiling, where it's more taking into account the floor. It's just, to me, the unusual part is the floor is just so high up. It's really, really rare to usually see it at that mark.
Yeah, I will say I would be very, very surprised if he was a bust. I almost feel like it can't happen. Yeah. Unless he gets hurt. Agreed.
Yeah, I would totally go with that. Well, let's keep it moving here, because we do know that, I don't think Mason Graham's got much of a chance to fall to Seattle. I guess you also answer the question as well, as if he's at like 8 or 9, because you may not have the blue chip grade, though you see him as a top 10 guy. Also not a position we need right now, so this is also part of it, but you wouldn't be looking to really trade up or target him either as a trade up option.
No, I can't imagine doing that now. And I think the lowest he gets would be that Niners pick. I think they pick at 11, if I remember. No way he gets past the Niners. I think that's my Niners fan friend is kind of like locking onto him as his pipe dream pick.
I could see it. They let go of Malik, and I think they let go of Collins, and they let go of Hargrave this offseason, and they've not done a good job of really establishing themselves with other guys around there. So definitely a need for that team right now as it stands too. I could see that being where he goes.
Yeah, sure. Can't have triple teams thrown at Bosa all year.
No, you can't. You'd hope not. Well, we get to the next guy who I think is definitely going to be on the Hawks' radar, on my radar. Very close with this guy, too, to giving him almost a blue chip grade. Couldn't quite get there on it, but got very close on this one, Brendan. And this is a guy that is a fan favorite from many out there, and a guy that I loved his tape the second I turned it on. This is the best nose tackle in the entire draft, and probably by far to me. Some other guys got some potential, but this guy's right closer to where that potential's at. Kenneth Grant, where have you finally landed as a conclusion on him?
This one just kind of slots in more perfectly than any other prospect I think the Seahawks could get. Like, this one just makes sense. It's a smooth fit. It fills a need. It turns that defensive line into an all-time strength to me. Like there are better players in this draft, and there are players that I would rather the Seahawks get than Ken Grant. But if we're being realistic about it, I think this is like the perfect fit. Just somehow, I see this one coming together more than any other player that we could select. Ken Grant, another Michigan guy, so hell of a 1-2 punch on that Michigan team these last couple of years. Yeah, he is the best nose tackle in this draft, and it's a good nose tackle draft, by the way. Much better than previous years, I think.
Much better.
Big body. He takes up a ton of real estate. He's just like wide. He's long. Hard to get around him. He's just a massive space eater in there. He does have a little bit of upside to also rotate to 3-tech as well if you have a need for that kind of stuff. He's very strong, very powerful. His first step out of his stance is quick and allows him to shoot gaps, which not a lot of these big nose tackle guys can do. A lot of them just, they don't have gap shooting as a skill. This guy can do a little bit of it. For his size, he's an elite athlete. I know he didn't really do much at the combine, but he is a very good athlete for a 330-pounder. His bull rush knocks people back. He's got big knockback power. He's actually got a little bit of wiggle in his pass rush moves as well. He's got, the over-under. He's got the swim move. It's not just coming straight at you. It's actually like he's actually got a plan when he's rushing the passer. He covers a good amount of ground for a nose tackle. He's got a strong anchor. He can anchor down and gobble up a double team. Really, really great prospect. I think the concerns with him are just leverage because he is a little bit on the taller side. He's 6'4". You got to sink down a little bit. Stamina. I think stamina is a concern. He plays in a very tight rotation on that Michigan team. Over the last 27 games he played for the Wolverines, he played less than 1,000 total snaps. Now, for the Seahawks, that might be okay because they have a pretty deep defensive line rotation. But I'm just saying, if you're planning on throwing this guy out there and having him play 50 snaps a game, it's probably not going to go so well. And he's one of my favorite players in this draft. I see him able to do pretty much everything from that nose tackle position. He just needs a little bit of time to refine his craft, learn how to sink his hips a little bit. And I think he'll be a 3-down player. I think he's a top 15 player in this draft easily. And if you could get him at 18, that's something that would really just set my mind at ease for the rest of the draft, no matter what happens almost.
It really would. I think I find myself pretty much in close alignment to your evaluation of him. The fact he's got some pass rush moves there is very impressive. And that swim move, man, that thing's like a chainsaw coming down when he wants to rip that swim move to get free. And it really works because you get the team's kind of loading up for that power with him because the power is so substantial. The thing with the first step quickness, which stands out as well, is that he creates with that first step quickness, not necessarily always trying to get by the guy. Sometimes he'll do that, but sometimes it's to create the first step quickness to get his hands into the offensive lineman first. And he's got about 33.5-inch long arms. So he's got the arm length in there to kind of catch to that lineman before they get their arms up with that quickness. And that gives him early wins and allows him to then kind of dictate the pace and the flow of the play for where he wants to go and what he wants to do. And he's very smart then at locating and tracking down the ball. I think that this to me is an evaluation that's really locked in. I know I've said it before in this, Brendan, but you have Daniel Jeremiah, former scout, Baltimore Ravens, says this guy's a Haloti Ngata. That's the comp I see. He was in Baltimore's, front office as far as when they were evaluating the Haloti Ngata. So this isn't just an empty comp from some guy who was not connected. And then you have the pro days of these two guys, and you match up the pro days to a Haloti Ngata and a Kenneth Grant, and these guys are almost exactly the same across the board. I mean, almost the same. And it's kind of startling to me. And so this is one where you've got the comp, you've got the productivity, you've got a very complete player, and it's for a position of need. It's one of the rare spots in this draft where value hits need in just the perfect place for us if he can fall to that realm. Question really is just, is he going to fall to that realm, right?
Yeah. And I think he's going to get close at least. I don't see this guy going in the top 10. At the end of the day, he is a nose tackle. I don't know if a nose tackle is going to go in the top 10 in the modern NFL. A lot of people think he's going to at least get to 16, and then it's just a couple of spots down. So if it gets that close, then I think this is certainly worth talking about. This isn't a Mason Graham situation at all. Grant could absolutely be there at 18, and unless something crazy happens, like Membo is there somehow, or I don't know, maybe Kelvin Banks, maybe Tet McMillan. Although you saw the Tet McMillan stuff, by the way, just to.
Yeah. I mean, I think like there's some things I'm getting from other prospects on this too. Like the interview was from like his freshman year, okay. So like what we're having right now, and it's happening with a few prospects. I'm seeing this happen where it's that whole, teams are running spy game stuff right now where stuff gets leaked out from here, stuff gets leaked out from there because people are trying to get guys to drop and flow a little bit. That's my sense of it. I mean, I have a guy in my chat who has direct connections to that family and is very aware of that family, very aware of who he is as a kid. And so I asked him straight out, what's your take on this? And he poo-pooed it all down as far as any of that stuff goes. Now there's some stuff with him on route running and stuff. And we'll of course get to that with the receiver stuff with him does he always run the hard routes every time? Is he kind of sometimes acting like he's a decoy and he understands he's a decoy? So he's doing the Randy Moss, I'm going to take a play off here and there thing. I don't know, maybe a little bit on that with it, but the kids, I still fall back on that. You go back to the tape and it's legit. And I went back and watched it after all these does he love football stuff that's popped up last week. And I'm just like, man, it is Mike Evans I'm watching on tape. You just go watch and don't even watch Mike Evans as Buccaneer. Watch Mike Evans as a Texas A&M Long, not long, but whatever, Aggie. Watch him as an Aggie there and watch how he moves and look how his body is. And he's a little thinner than he is as a pro. And his body is even exactly just equivalent to Tet McMillan in just size, length, all how they move. It's down to the nth degree, really. With Grant, really love, again, just the fact this guy does swallow up those double teams. Like you said, gobbles it up, I think is the word that you used. And you have to double team this guy. If you give him a single block, he's going to annihilate the single block. You cannot, especially if you try to test him with a center, he's going to whoop that guy's butt 10 ways from Sunday. You're okay. Let's say Mabeau's off the board. Campbell's off the board. You're looking at him at 12.
Mm-hmm.
Is he worthwhile enough for you at that point if he drops to a 12 to take a late third to move up to 12 to get him? Or just you want him, landing on your deck, or you want him landing to 15 to where it only costs a fourth to go up 2 spots to get him? How aggressive do you want to be with this guy?
I'm letting it get down to about 14 or 15 before I trade up. I don't think I'm going at 12 for him. I wouldn't be against it, but I don't think I'm chasing it at that point. Yeah. I'm not quite there yet. I think I'm letting it get to about 14 or 15 first.
I'm in a similar place. I would be willing for a couple spots up for a 4th rounder to do it if he does dip into that spot, especially if we're considering the rest of the talent pool that's going to be available to us. That spot isn't looking as necessarily vibrant as he is, as far as especially the fit and the value there. But I'd be about in the same place. A great player, Brendan. Really fun nose tackle. One of the better nose tackles I think we've seen in the past couple of years, huh? Like who's the last nose tackle that you'd say? I think he's better at this point. Like Jordan Davis had, I think, potential coming out. He's not been a bad player, but I don't think Jordan Davis has quite realized what the Eagles hoped he would become as a nose tackle. I think he's better than that.
Is he better? Is he the best since Vita Vea?
Yeah, probably since Vita Vea. Yeah.
Vita Vea. I should know how to pronounce his name, damn it. Okay, my bad.
You got a lot of names on the mind, man. It happens.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I struggle with that stuff, of course. His pass rush production over the last 2 years is almost equivalent to Graham's from the nose tackle spot. And I know that can be a little bit deceiving. I'm not saying that means that Grant is almost as good a pass rusher, but it is notable that he actually has 50 quarterback pressures combined over the last 27 games he's played, which is for a nose tackle that's competing for pressures with, how many guys has Michigan had over the last 2 years? Not just Graham and Stewart, but they've also had guys like, how many guys did they have go pro last year?
Oh yeah, there was a couple averages from the Mike Morrises to there was the one guy with the name. He had the cool name. Remember last year, another tall
Junior. No, it wasn't Junior Colson.
No, it wasn't Junior. Yeah, he's in Southern. It was the other guy that was like tall, long guy on the coming off.
Oh man, yeah. It was kind of gave you a Jadeveon Clowney type impression. Hold on. This is going to drive me nuts if I can't remember his name.
I can't remember it either. I'm totally spacing on his name, but we looked at him too really closely.
Yeah. Well, there was Jalen Harrell and Braden McGregor last year. Those guys.
McGregor. That's the guy. It was McGregor. That was the one, with it. So you do have help, but you're right about the impressive it is because of the fact too is he's dealing with double teams a lot of the times to get in to make that pressure happen. There's probably way more single blocks up on Graham than there was on him on creating that pressure. Some of it is also them running the games they do in Michigan with so many of the stunts and loops. But that's also, again, really cool about him because those nose tackles don't tend to be able to run the stunt loop game that much because they don't have the lateral ability or the explosiveness up the field for the time it takes to, loop those guys around like that. So he's really, to me, a pretty safe prospect here and just gives you such a huge skill set from the nose tackle position that's so hard to find. So very hard to find.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
All right, well, we'll keep it moving here to our next guy. Very interesting prospect. Another 3-tech, Brendan. And I don't know if this is going to be a guy on the Hawks' radar really when it's all said and done, but a guy that deserves to go in the first round. You talk about a pressure machine, just a pressure machine out there at Oregon. Derek Harmon, 6'5", 310-pound, 3-tech out of there. What are we thinking about Derek Harmon? Do you have a first-round grade?
Yes, I do. And I actually even elevated him a little bit to like the mid-late first. Most places seem to have him as a late first guy. But this, to me, is the guy who has superstar potential even more than a Graham. Now, there's a trade-off there. He does have a lower floor, I think. A lot lower floor, in fact. And I could see Harmon ending up washing out a little bit here because there are some issues here with his reactive athleticism and short area quickness. He's also taller. which could end up being a problem in the NFL because being tall is actually often bad when you're playing in the trenches. But there's a lot that I like about him. He's got the long arms. He's much bigger than Graham. He's got like almost 20 pounds on Graham. He's got he only did his 40 at the combine, but he had a real nice 40 for a guy who weighs 313. Really hard to get around him because he's just so big. He's got the length and he's got the moves to shed blockers. He can just work through blockers with his like swim move and his arm over move, and he just stacks and sheds really well. He punches really hard in the trenches. Should be able to fit into any defense. I think a 4-3 or a 3-4, it's all going to work. His pass rush production in 2024 was crazy good, and he's doing it against tough competition too. It's not like the old days where you're in the Pac-12 and you're getting to play a lot of these kind of more softer teams with a poorer reputation for most of the season. 55 pressures according to PFF last year. Now the downside as I see it, one thing that a lot of people have said about him, one thing that a lot of the way people put it is he kind of has like tight hips. So he doesn't have like the smooth movement skills that some of these guys do. It feels like he doesn't always cash in on his opportunities to make a play. Like he's got 55 pressures last year, but only 5 sacks. That tells you that he's letting some opportunities get away from him a little bit. Double teams do still cause him trouble. This isn't a Ken Grant thing where Ken Grant's really figured out how to just take on the double team and hold strong. This guy will get pushed out of the play a little bit. So there are some issues here that could lead to him being a disappointment in the NFL. But this is the guy who I think is going to end up the Pro Bowl caliber player, more likely the all-pro level player, even if there is that steeper downside. So I'd go middle first round.
I like it. I'm a little more into probably the later portions of the first round with him. I've got him as a guy that, you get the thing with his testing times, Brendan, is he gave you very comparable testing times to Chris Jones. His size, very comparable to Chris Jones. I mean, it is pretty stunning how closely aligned they are on that testing time. I do think he has more, and we'll see if you like this as a comp. Zach Allen is the comp that I went to as far as his actual game and how he plays. So he's not Chris Jones, but I do think Zach Allen is the guy that he could be. Bigger, technical, 3-tech. I think that what you talked about with the hand usage and the moves are very apropos here, where he's got a variety of moves. You mentioned the over, the swim. He's also got a great little rip move. He can go to your points about the stiff hips. I think also a little bit of, he's not the most explosive guy coming off the line of scrimmage. In addition to that, that's where you can't get to the Chris Jones comp with him, where Chris Jones, of course, can move a bit like a cat at times at his size. And he's not quite, to that place of things. I think he uses his size more than his power in the run game. I do think he's really a pure 3-tech. You're not going to really be moving him over to nose tackle, at all, in my opinion. But I think that you're right about this guy having a lot of potential too. And that when you have a guy that creates that kind of pressure like he does to that higher rate, I don't know if there's another 3-tech we'll look at in this draft who created as much pressure as he did last year. That's substantial. It's no small little thing to me overlook on that side of it. And he just knows how to get off blocks, man. He just knows how to get around him and get off of them and slide through them. And a real fun player to watch in that way. He's got a lot in his bag. And I think that's where, I've got a little more feeling maybe you on the floor because of that stuff in the bag, but just I don't know about the total upper end on it of where he'll get, especially is he going to play the run as well as I'd like him to play at the next level. I have a little bit of questions on that. Not like it's a gaping part of his game. Do you feel as solidly that he's going to be able to hold up as a run defender?
I think he'll be okay. Maybe it'll be, to my understanding, I don't watch every Eagles game, is that Jalen Carter doesn't really stack up that well against the run. But they work to mitigate that. It could be a situation like that where it's nothing that you can't handle.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely what they do with the Eagles. They're still protecting Carter out there against the run at times. So it's 100%. So you got a mid first. I'm kind of a little bit later first, but we both will probably acknowledge not really on the Seahawks radar when it's all said and done here with Grant or Harmon.
Yeah. I can't imagine that being the pick. Unless he's there in like the second round, I guess, then the value takes over, but that's not going to happen at this point.
No, he's going, if anything, his star's rising, not dipping, especially with I think people are just he's not Chris Jones, but I think that testing numbers of Chris Jones too just kind of solidifies it with the pressures where it's like somebody will if anything, just at the very least trick themselves into thinking that's what they might be getting, even though I don't think that's what you're getting with him.
Right.
12 for life. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. 12 for life. I appreciate you doing that. Folks, we're doing every 2 weeks call-in show for members of the channel right now. So keep an eye out on your community post if you are a member. God's Gang, thank you for the $2 donation. He's got a great question. Who would you take if you've got the choice between McMillan or Kenneth Grant, Brendan?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
This is not easy on this one. This is not easy. That's why I make you answer it first.
I feel like it's McMillan. I do. I just wish that McMillan was more of a speedster, because I feel like right now the Seahawks receiver room needs speed. You know, we've got a lot of kind of bigger, slower guys at the moment. Like JSN's not very fast. Obviously, Bobo's one of the slowest receivers in football. MVS is our only really speed threat. So I wish McMillan was like one of the speedster guys rather than a big target, but he's still going to be so good.
Well, and if he ran a 4.4, he's going top 5, right? That's the other part of that, is that he ain't landing you at that rate if he's going to run that fast, you know?
Yeah. I think the answer is McMillan, though.
Yeah, God's Gang, I think I've got to go for McMillan too. I think that ultimately I have them both as being right on the line of being blue chip players. They're right on that edge for me. But then, so if that's the case, then they're very basically aligned right at each other's point. So then to me, Brendan, I think that the differentiation has to come from positional value, doesn't it? I mean, that becomes that becomes kind of the one that pushes it over. What's more value, a nose tackle in a defense or a number 1 wide receiver on the outside?
Yeah, especially for this team right now. Like, I know we need a nose tackle, but also at the same time, receivers just more important, more valuable. They're on the field more. Often nose tackles get taken off the field on passing downs.
Well, like you said to him with him, and that they rotated a lot with that Michigan defense, and it's right. And the thing with being nose tackles at that size at 340 is that, you know, when you play really hard like Grant does, even if you're in really good shape, it's hard to play a lot of snaps. You're carrying a lot of weight on that body. You get gassed out really quickly the more weight you're carrying on the body. And so, again, difference between the snap counts and how many you're going to have one guy on the field versus the other guy on top of impact. So it's close for me, God's Gang, but I would go with McMillan because of those reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, man. Appreciate the donation. Great question. All right. We're going to get to one of my least favorite players as we start to slide for me into the second round, Brendan. And this is one of what I would call my begrudging grades. I've given him this grade, but I'm going to need you to sell me on this guy. I need you to be one of the hype machine folks out there that are trying to tell me online that this guy's Jalen Carter 2.0. Walter Nolan, 3-tech out of Ole Miss. What do you see with this guy?
Well, I definitely don't think he's Jalen Carter, so you don't got to worry about that. I don't know where that comes from. I hadn't heard that one yet. He's if anything kind of like one of these slightly undersized 3-techs, right?
Mm-hmm. I've got him as a bigger, slightly less explosive Kalijah Cansey.
Mm-hmm. So the good things about Walter Nolan, he's got a quick trigger at the snap. He's somebody who shoots out of his stance into contact. He does actually have a little bit of bend, and this is something we're going to talk about a lot when we talk about the edge rushers. Bend to get underneath blockers, which is less valuable when you're playing inside, but it's still valuable. He does have a little bit of upside to be able to do one-tech stuff because he did do a lot of eating up double teams in college, although I don't know how well that's going to translate. He uses his hands well, high effort, and he's pretty good at shooting gaps. Last year, he averaged more than 1 tackle for loss a game, so he's got some gap shooting upside. My issues are, I don't know if the nose tackle stuff is going to translate because he is kind of small and he's got short arms, so I don't think you can really look at him like that. He doesn't really have a lot in his bag as a pass rusher. It tends to be more straightforward stuff. It tends to be just like coming right at you. He doesn't have moves. He doesn't have like tricks that he can bust out. So there's definitely limited value there. So I didn't really fall in love with him either. I do think he's going to be good. I do think he's going to be valuable. I don't really see superstar potential here. I think he's just going to be another good player. I went with like back end of the first round. I think that's about where I would put him.
Yeah, punishing three tech, first step quickness, bolt off the line of scrimmage, violent hands. Sometimes, like you said, can get a little bit of the being able to handle the double teams. He's a real hunter as a pass rusher, used lurking and sifting through the pass protection to just look and find a crack at daylight when he can. Over 130 snaps off the edge this year, which is not going to be his role as a pro, but does explain a little bit maybe some of the lack of production that you see at times from him. I didn't see much with him as far as, like you said, the hand usage past the rip move. That was the only thing that it seemed like he could really go and call upon. I really felt like his engine runs it runs hot and then it runs very cold, ice cold. And that's really the big centralized point that bothered me in watching him, is that you get the one flashy snap, which is where I think the Carter stuff comes from people, Brendan, where they see the flashy snap and he throws some guy aside and goes over here, one of those TFLs that you talk about. But then you've got 6 plays where he's not a complete non-factor, where you can feel he's not going at 100% of the energy level and effort. I feel like some of drafting this player is going to be that you've got confidence in your ability to turn the switch on all the time rather than just kind of some of the time. I think as well, he got the benefit, and there's some 3 techs in this draft that get the benefit of this in the defensive schemes that they're with, where the team didn't really trust them as much into 2-gap situations. So what they told him to do is just get your happy ass upfield. Just go attack upfield. But when you just do always that as a 3 tech and you're always getting upfield, you run up out of the gap. And then if the run play is coming back through where you just vacated, you've left a hole there without getting pushed out of the hole. And the guard can then just route you. It's that move where they shoot the gap and then the guard just routes them through the back of the backfield. But then there's the hole right there for them for the running back to right where you want it to go. And because he's always one gapping and always getting up the field there, it's out of control and he takes himself out of the gap at times. And I just wonder if they told him to do that at Ole Miss as much as anything, because we know you're not as good on the 2 gapping stuff. We know that's not necessarily as centralized a part of your game. And just a part that I wonder about, because you're going to have to ask him in this defense, especially, we want our linemen up front to 2 gap more than we want single gapping. We'll do a little bit of that, but it's mainly you're trying to control and let the linebackers go make plays behind you. So definitely a guy that I know it's a 3 tech anyway, but I really had a hard time seeing the fit. I thought that he would just rot when he went up against double teams. It's just basically he's doing nothing at that point in the tape when I watched him. But a guy that I can't get as much in on. I meant the comp to Elijah Cansey, but he's not as explosive as Cansey. He's not as refined with his hands as Cansey, or understands leverage as Cansey. Cansey, like 6 foot, so he won those leverage battles all the time. This is one of those guys to me gets a little high at times too. I go 2nd round, Brendan, but I do at times feel like there's part of me that wants to dip him lower because I don't trust that engine's going to turn on hot when he becomes a pro.
Yeah, I didn't really notice the effort stuff as much, but I do agree with most of your other points. Like, I do think he did okay against double teams in college, but I don't think he's going to be able to pull that off in the NFL. He's too small and he's got short arms, and I don't think he's got enough gas to really hold up there. You're right. And there just isn't enough. Like you're an undersized 3 tech and you don't really have a diverse rush package. Like that's tough. That's tough to make work.
You can get away with it as a nose tackle, right? Because you can just be big and powerful and just hold up against double teams. You're fine. But 3 tech, you kind of got to have some of that in your bag.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, we'll keep it moving here with my other, and I only have 2 second round guys for me, Brendan, in for the defensive tackle position, and that's going to be one of the more talented guys, kind of cut from the sort of the Shamar Stewart cloth of freakishness coming from the inside of the 3 tech position, but maybe a little bit raw. Darius Alexander, the kid out of Toledo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very interesting one here. He's going to be 25 when the season starts. So it's pretty rare that you see a prospect that is expected to be a top 50 guy, and this guy is top 50 on every major big board that I found, who's 25, unless he's like a quarterback that's just, a Peyton Manning type. So this is atypical. This is definitely atypical, but he's got 300 plus pounds. He's got the 34-inch arms. He tested quite well, explosive, quick, fast. Pretty good production over the last couple of years at Toledo. He's got like 83 combined pressures over the last 2 seasons. On Toledo, by the way, he's not playing on Alabama with 8 other All-Pros around him or anything like that. The thing that stands out to me would just be the fact that I think he's going to be good against the run and the pass. I think he's going to be able to provide value on both sides of it. He's got a good stack and shed game. He can stack and shed blockers, work through the thicket to get to the ball. He's quick off the snap as well. He just rockets into contact. good lateral agility, able to actually keep moving side to side. And he really knows how to use his long arms to win engagements down in the trenches. So there's a lot to like here. I do think he loses leverage too much. I think occasionally he can be a little bit. This is the guy that I kind of felt like was occasionally just a little bit sleepy out there, maybe a little. And the fact that he is less likely to improve in some of these areas because he's already almost 25 is a knock against him. I think that's legitimate. If this guy was 21 and we were talking about him, I think he'd be a top 15, maybe 20 pick or something. Doesn't really have an advanced pass rush bag yet, in my estimation. It's not terrible or anything, but it's not great. So again, these are just things that I wish we were talking about with a 21-year-old instead of a guy who's about to be 25. But I think his length and his lateral agility and his overall shedding skills are still going to provide value for any defensive line. So I'd say middle second round. I think middle second round hits about right for me.
Yeah, I see very much some of the same stuff. I mean, he's a raw freak show, which if you're getting a guy that's 25, that's not something that you would like to say about him. But the freakishness also is that I would say, taking age out of it, he's got as much natural gifts as anybody in this draft with that upside. Now, the bust factor that's there is maybe a little bit true as well, and that is as much on the equivalent side of it. I found that he just threw guards around out there. When he decides he's going to overpower you and he says, okay, I'm going to do this, he's going to do it. He's going to control you and throw you around. To me, he carries 310 pounds like a guy that's 285 pounds. Hit 20 miles per hour on a pick six, 67-yard interception return this year, kind of Leonard Williams-esque on that interception return. So I just feel like he bends guards unnaturally, almost like a folding chair, Brendan. It's really stood out in looking at him on the tape, and he's just got gifts that you just can't teach. Those 34-inch long arms and knowing how to use them, the quickness and the speed that he brings into it. I could see him in certain ways. I don't think Seattle would draft him like this, but I sort of daydreamed a little bit about the thought of, like, you put this guy as like a power edge, what he could do for you. Like, good luck moving that from a tackle position at that point. But obviously, probably not on the Seahawks radar here, as he's going to be best in as a 3-tech, 4th highest rated defensive tackle by PFF last year too, Brendan. So, hit the markers with a 90.1 on that as well. So he kind of does enough, I think, checking the boxes on that to where he'll sell somebody on him. But I do see the same thing. Mid-first round pick. The age is going to ding him a bit on this one, despite the real natural beastly talent.
Mid-first or mid-second?
Mid-second. Sorry. Okay. I meant mid-second if I said mid-first.
I was a little confused there for a second.
No. Can't go that high on him. All right, we'll keep it moving here. Let's move it on to another guy that's another interesting player in this draft. We've got some guys in this draft, Brendan, that'll have in what I would call 1-tech size, like a Mason Graham or whatever, but you actually see them over at 3-tech, and this is one of those guys for me a little bit who spends more of his time there. Tyleik Williams,
yes,
the Ohio State defensive tackle.
Right. So this guy's a little bit tricky. A lot of people talk about him as a nose tackle, and maybe that's where things end up in the NFL, but he does have very short arms, and I think that limited his utility in that regard. So Tyleik, he's big. He's got that 334-pound frame. So he's got the size for it, at least in terms of his body. He hits really hard coming off the snap. His initial contact is just a big pop. Makes a lot of plays on the ball carrier in the run game. This is a 334-pound guy that has about 100 tackles combined over the last 2 seasons. Not easy to do. And 18 tackles for loss, so that tells you that he's making plays in the backfield. He's not just some big fat guy in the middle taking up space. He's got movement skills. He can keep up with the outside zone runs. He's not somebody who's just going to be rooted down between the hashes. He's actually going to be able to move side to side to snuff out the outside zone runs. I feel like he plays standing straight up and loses leverage because of it. I think that he needs to learn how to sink his hips. Doesn't offer a lot as a pass rusher, and that's where things start to get a little bit tricky in figuring out where he slots in and what he will actually do. Like, he's played a ton of football over the last 2 years for Ohio State, and he's got 42 PFF pressures. And Ohio State's making the playoff, understand that, so he's playing extra games. So Tyleik Williams not offering a lot as a pass rusher, And I don't know if he's long enough or strong enough to actually be a nose tackle. So it's actually a little bit frustrating. He's like a run stuffing three tech at the end of the day, right? He's a run stuffer. He's great against the run, but he can't do nose tackle stuff. Now there's room in the world for a run stuffing three tech. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I'm investing super highly into. So the aggregate puts him in like the middle second. I went more late second on him. I think I struggled.
I got him all the way in the third for me, Brendan, and there's part of me that wants to dip him down to late third, to be honest with you. Your assessment of him is exactly where I'm at with him. I mean, there's no doubting what he can do as a three tech and that he's strong as an ox, and he's going to be bigger than any left guard he's going against. And so he's just going to, in a lot of ways, crush him in the run game and be instinctive and find the ball and get to the ball and make tackles. Like as a run defender three tech, there's no doubting he's got the full skill set to provide there. But when it comes to him as a pass rusher, like you said, he's got no plan of attack, no pass rush moves. He's just kind of launching his body into the offensive lineman and hoping kind of good things can happen. And eventually he can find himself a quarterback around him. And so you go, okay, where's the value on this kind of guy? I mean, where it's a good skill to have. Also kind of weird, isn't it, Brendan, when you watch Ty Hamilton to the side of him, a guy we're not going to talk about because more of a 7th round guy in this draft, 6'3", 299, 31 1/4 inch arms. They put Ty Hamilton at the nose. And then they got Tyleek at the three tech. And you're like, how did, what's that?
Kind of made you think of like Texas not putting Sweat at nose tackle a couple
years ago. It was just
ago, right?
like, that's exactly what I was thinking, where I'm like, is this some sort of like Texas thing that they're doing here? But the thing with Sweat is you knew he could play nose. You knew he could, but I agree with you on all the questions about him, about being able to play nose or not. I don't know if I can quite see him doing it. I do have kind of a Michael Pierce comp. Michael Pierce is a nose tackle pure, so it's not a great comp from my perspective, in that this guy, all your assessment onto it being a three tech is true, I think. And then I don't think he's going to be able to do really nose tackle stuff at the next level at this point. Going back and really diving into the tape, I just felt like coming away, three tech run stuffer. So he's kind of off the Hawks radar to me at that point, unless they believe he can make that transition.
Yeah, just kind of frustrating, because there's so many things there that you do like, but what is it for? What is it?
It's this close to being a nose tackle to be perfectly fitted, right? It was just if he was in the position playing that as good in the run defense in that spot, then you'd feel so much more warm and fuzzy about it.
Yep, I agree.
All right, we'll keep it moving here with another 3rd round guy for me, and that's going to be a fun little defensive tackle, TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. South Carolina, Ole Miss defense this year, Brendan, kicking some dudes out into this draft.
Yeah. There are a lot of these like undersized, try hard three techs in this draft, and I appreciate most of them. They're a lot of fun. They try really hard. They overcome.
And they overcompensate by making sure they've got usually that wider skill set than some of these big fatties that just try to get by in their size or length, or, just being bullies, basically.
Mm-hmm. All right, so TJ Sanders, average arm length, pretty good testing scores overall. The explosiveness is there.
Completely forgetting the Banders, by the way, through this whole thing. My bad.
Oh, no problem.
I had him done, by the way. I just completely spaced him out. Sorry about that, folks.
Yeah, TJ Sanders. So what I like about him, I think he holds up really well. He holds his ground really well, even though he's undersized. He finds a way to just kind of anchor down and not give up his gap. Skilled at twists and stunts. Like, I imagine this guy could do really well on the current Rams defense with all the twisting that they do.
Oh yeah.
He's also pretty good at shedding blockers to work to the ball, pretty capable of getting through the thicket. Hits hard and generates knockback force on the ball carrier. He's a skilled playmaker against the run. He's got 17 tackles for loss over the last 2 years, so he's making a lot of plays in the backfield. 93 tackles as a three tech, pretty good. Now, while I think he's a decent pass rusher, he's not upper level. He doesn't bring a lot of moves to the table. He's not some guy who's going to be knifing in there constantly to get to the quarterback. I feel like he's a little bit slow out of his snap sometimes. Like, you'll look at these reps and he's like the last guy with his hand out of the dirt. He doesn't move that well in space. He's not a super fluid mover in space overall. I feel like his change of direction skills are not great. And he does kind of sort of struggle with leverage, which is probably going to be a bigger problem in the pro game. but he's fun. He's explosive. I think he's going to offer value in both areas of defense. I could even see him being like an undersized nose tackle if he can learn the leverage game. But I'm pretty good with this one. I'd go like late second round on it. I think he's relatively fun. I think late second round's about right for me.
Yeah, I put him in the third. I've got let's see if you like the comp. Justin Matabuke light.
Hey, that'd be that. I'd take that if it works out like that. I mean, Matabuke put together.
Do you see the upside there as a potential with him on that, or is that too big? I'm not saying Justin Matabuke pure. I like to put the light in there where it's like, think of it not full on poor man version of Justin Matabuke, just the light, the Diet Cola version of Matabuke.
I think Diet Cola tastes like cancer, so I'm not the person to be asking about that. I don't like
any cola, so I don't.
Oh, really?
I don't drink any soda. No. I'm a coffee guy all the way.
Yeah. Well, he's 22, so he can definitely improve his pass rush bag. Right now, I think it's a little limited, but he could get there.
See, and I did like the bag a little bit more. I felt like he did a good job of pairing pass rush moves together and having a different plan of attack that he could kind of bring in at times. So I think I was a little more higher on you with where, he's got some stuff to me in his bag and his ability to do it. I think physically you capture well where I would see the same place to be. I think the part that jumps out that I do like about him is he's got an ability, I think, to both one gap and two gap. Unlike a Walter Nolan that kind of only show an ability to do one versus the other, he really, to me, shows an ability to do kind of both, even at a little bit of that undersized weight that he, does bring together. But I liked him as a player because I did like, there was really those moves that I thought that I saw a little bit more of where chaining them together. He's got a different pass rush attack kind of playing and play out to what he brings. And so he keeps it changed up for the offensive lineman where they can't just kind of lock in on one thing that you're trying to kind of do or two things you're trying to kind of do. But a guy that is not really going to fit as much the Hawks regardless here. There's just not a fit. He's not, to me, going to be able to get to a nose tackle spot at 290 pounds. And I know Byron can sometimes do that Murphy, but he's not Byron Murphy in that way. Your points about playing a little bit high at 6'4", also true, would kind of eliminate some of that. So I think he's a very solid 3-tech, can be that Justin Matabuke-like guy. He's not going to reach Justin Matabuke heights, but can he be a 6-7 sack a guy a year for you with some decent run defense in his ultimate upside? Yeah, I think he could potentially be that. But I put third round grade on him myself.
Okay, that's pretty close to where I am.
Yeah, about the same spot. Well, let's go to another guy here, Brendan, that is one of my favored. I mean, just my second favorite nose tackle in this draft, quite frankly. I think another guy you like decently enough too, and that's going to be Jordan Phillips out of Maryland.
Yeah. Okay, so let me pull that up. Sorry, I just switched to my nose tackle document here. Let's see.
He's like 20, by the way, too. I know you had the age thing that you were unsure of on the deal. He's like 20 years old.
Okay, well that does make him more interesting. So, anyway, so a little bit smaller than typical nose tackle, but he's very squat, which is nice, right? He's very short, 6'2", 312 pounds. Very short arms though, like painfully short, 31.5 inches. That's not easy to overcome. So I'm interested to see how he does with that. His testing was a mixed bag, fairly explosive, but change of direction skills. He had a 8.19 3-cone, which is one of the worst I've ever seen.
It's pretty slow.
Luckily, as a nose tackle, you don't have to do that kind of stuff all that often. So I think we can live with that. Pretty much, let's see here. Positives. Locker room leader at Maryland. He's got a good explosive first step, gives high effort at all times. He's got a good amount of power as well. Sound fundamental football overall. I think he understands the nuances and technique of how to play nose tackle. Decent pass rush tricks in his bag, even though he has very little actual pass rush production in his career. And he does occasionally show a little bit of potential as a gap shooter. But none of that really ever manifested in college. He's gotten 0 sacks combined over the last 2 years and 26 pressures. It's not his game. But my main issue with him as a nose tackle is just how is he going to shed blockers with his T-Rex arms? That's hard to imagine. And sometimes I feel like he loses his balance a little bit when he's engaging with blockers. So at the end of the day, he's a pure run stuffer. I think he's good at eating up space, but in terms of actually being like disruptive, in terms of actually like getting into the backfield and making plays, very limited in that area. So I'd go like late round 3. I think I'm in that mid to late round 3 area on him. I do like him as a pure nose tackle, but I do have some questions about how this is going to work at the pro level personally. He's playing at Maryland, right? He's playing weaker competition a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm in the same place as you are, and I think we're almost exactly in alignment. And I mean, my first notes I have on him is pure run stuffing nose tackle with trash compactor power. That's and that's what you're getting there, where he's going to bully, manhandle centers. He can handle the double teams and not get moved. What I like with him is that first he gives you that. The thing you want the nose tackles first and foremost is the unending power, the ability to just overwhelm guys with power, dedicate the 2 blockers. You have to do it. He has that width to him too that you like from the nose tackle. We didn't mention about this with Grant, but he's got that as well, Brendan, where you want those guys a little extra wide so that it's harder to get that climber to the second level in the linebacker. I mean, Belichick used to reference this, where he wanted his nose tackles, yes, to be big, but to be wide, because it would protect his inside linebackers behind them. Harder to get to those climb blocks than when you've got that guy that's that big down there underneath in that way. And I don't know if you saw this with him, but what I liked as well is that he'd have a changeup that he could provide. And he doesn't have a lot of changeups. Everything he said about the pass rush is true. You're getting pure run. But what he could do is that he locks you out, and you're like, man, this power's a lot to deal with. And then he would have this little bunny hop move that he could employ, where off the snap, instead of launching at you, he'd bunny hop to the side and then get up the field. And it would be a real curveball there for those linemen that were getting used to him just coming at them with the full force of the power, and that he'd had a little bit of that bunny hop at that size, a little bit of that, juice a little bit laterally to get like that off the snap. I thought was really impressive. Red shirt sophomore, baby, super young. I love these kind of guys coming out, because those are the guys where, to me, you really get out there trying to project a little bit more of their upside them to their game. The arm length is a valid part of this, though. I just didn't feel like the arm length stuff. It's a little bit to me like with Graham. The arm length's there. There's no getting around it. But did I actually feel that on tape with him? Did I actually feel like his short arms were costing him somewhere on tape? And I didn't. He's got a great understanding of leverage, and I just felt like he was able to get kind of around that in that way.
Okay. I definitely put a lot of value in that, but I just often ask myself, well, how is this going to look in the pros when everybody has longer arms, when everybody's a better athlete,
I get it. No, I completely understand it. And arm length matters, man. Arm length absolutely matters. And I mean, you go talk to any offensive line coach in the sport, and they will all point to you. I mean, there's a reason why we don't have barely any offensive linemen. This whole thing with the Will Campbell thing's come up right now, where there's no offensive lineman with 33-inch long arms really working it on either right tackle or left tackle in the pros. Like there's one maybe, like Braden Smith or something with the Colts. Everybody else is 33 and well above over 33 inches as far as arm length goes. So this isn't any small thing. It's not just arm length isn't just some whatever stat. It is important. It does matter. It's a factor.
Yeah, right.
But we got the same spot on him. I'm a mid to late 3rd round guy on him as well. You're not getting pass rush, so you do want to get him a little bit later on because of that. But upside still there with him as a run defender, I think. Well, next up, we got another nose tackle in this draft, Brendan, a little undersized guy, Jamari Caldwell. And I've got him in the 3rd round here. What do you think about this? We're a pretty productive nose tackle for Oregon here this past year.
Yeah. I remember when he was like a 7th or 6th round pick on the big boards, like a month and a half into this college football season. And I was really excited. I was like, wow, this guy could be a lot of value down there. And then the season went on and he just started creeping on up. So now he's like a 4th round pick on most big boards. But I discovered him before he was cool. I just want to point that out there right now.
I love it, Brendan. And he's a duck too. You're a Husky. So like you didn't come there just like easily either. You had to like really grind your teeth to get to the spot of liking him, I'm sure.
Yeah. So really big, really wide. He's broad. He's like a prototypical nose tackle, except for his arms, which we'll get to his arms in a second here. They're 32 inches, not good. But he's squat also as well. He's pretty close to the ground in terms of his build. He's able to hold up against double teams. He's somebody who can just absorb the double team and hold his ground. High effort at all times. He's also got the foot quickness to keep up against outside zone. Like he can actually go side to side, sideline to sideline. He does have some nice pass rush moves as well. This is not just a pure bull rusher. He's got some tricks in his bag. And he's a violent player, man. He hits violently. He comes at you with some violence. Kind of a weird oddity about his stats. Last year he had 0 sacks and 25 pressures. The year before that he had 6.5 sacks and 14 pressures. That's like a Jeopardy trivia question or something. You don't see that every day.
It's a bit odd.
Yeah. Now the short arms are a concern. They're the same length as Mason Graham, I think, 32 inches. I think he gets a little out of control sometimes. Like sometimes he just ends up on his backside a little bit. Sometimes I feel like he does get blown out of the play because he gets a little out of control. And there is a little bit of inconsistency to him. But I like Caldwell quite a bit. I think that even I'm 4th round on him, but I would not be furious about maybe taking him in like the very, very late 3rd round even, because I see some playmaking potential here I don't see with a lot of other nose tackles. I see the understanding of how to play with leverage. I see these things that I don't see in a lot of these players, that even the ones that I like. And quite honestly, short arms is a problem throughout this entire draft class. So I don't think disqualifying players because of short arms makes a lot of sense when it feels like so many of these players just have deficiencies there.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't. It's especially again too if it's not really where it's they're being costed at where you're just seeing them unable to get their hands on guys. They're seeing guys lock them out. They're not able to get off the blocks then because they're getting locked out. They can't get their arms on the offensive lineman. These are the ways that the shorter arms are going to show up for you on tape when you see it. I see the same thing in him with I see some real potential with him as a run stuffer who also then gives you some pass rush. Kind of interesting to see that a guy in Derek Harmon who's aligned right next to him at the 3 tech goes out there and gets his 50 plus pressures this year. But then when you turn on the tape in pass rushing situations, and Jamari Caldwell's the guy that's getting the double teams, not Derek Harmon. And so teams still saw him as a threat, as a pass rusher, not just when he was a run defender to have him there. He can hold up at the point of attack in the double teams. What stood out to me with him too, Brendan, is he doesn't even have to anticipate the double team. He can be locked in on the block with a center. The guard comes kind of like sneaking around the backside there to double him, and he just takes on the block and you don't see him move an inch. And it's very, very impressive. He is, I know we have listed 6'2" here, but he's actually 6'1".
Really?
And so, yeah, the place I was kind of going to where I was trying to understand with him, because when you get down to that size, when you get down to that shorter arm length, Brendan, you start to go, okay, where are my historical comps here for this guy? Especially if I'm going to consider him up into more of the day 2-ish range, like the 3rd round versus the 4th round, like you just mentioned. And the 2 guys that I was trying to come to was thinking about, and then I had to go off of them and pivot off of them, was DJ Jones and Brandon Mabane. Where I go, wait, does his game remind me of those guys? And I literally went back and looked at those 2 guys' games just to kind of cross-reference it. And I think the difference with him, Brendan, is they were first-step quickness guys with the leverage they provide at 6'1" to get under the pads. He's more of a lateral lateral quickness guy to me and what he does to create his pressure and stuff. So I don't know if I quite saw to where those guys were and what they did and how good of players that they've been in their game to what he is, but I think he's kind of close in that realm. I do go late 3rd round though with him because I do just like the all-around game to him. And I think at the very least you're getting a much like Jordan Phillips, who I have him right behind. He's, both the guys are at least going to give you the traditional stuff you want to get from the nose tackle position. Give me the guy that can stop the run, can be immovable, can take on the double teams. You're getting that with these guys bare minimum to me.
Yeah, I get the same sense as well. I do think that Caldwell is a little bit out of control at times, but that's something that he can learn. I think he's relatively young. I couldn't find his age, by the way, and that goes for a lot of these players.
Yeah, I'm not sure on him either.
Yeah, but he can obviously improve in those areas.
Yeah, and that's probably a little bit of him trying to use that lateral ability, sometimes just try to fly around and get around the guys because he doesn't have necessarily the size to do it. So he's going to use it with his legs to try to make it happen. That can get you into a position and maybe a little bit out of control at times. I know I'd sent you originally that I had this guy up a little bit higher, but I've kind of flip-flopped around on this. So I'm going to move this a little bit around to who I had. I know my next guy up originally we had is Joshua Farmer, but I was going back and watching the tape, and I think I've got to put this other guy a little bit ahead of him for my first guy in the 4th round. And that's going to be Omar Norman-Lott, a Tennessee 3 tech out there. What were your thoughts on him there in the 4th round? Or where do you have Matt?
I actually have him a little higher than that. This is one of those undersized 3 techs that really kind of did it for me, man. I liked Norman-Lott quite a bit. I actually elevated him up pretty close to like the early third even. I'm a little bit high on this one.
All right.
Really, he's really good at shooting gaps, disruptor in the backfield big time, moves well laterally as he works down the line to chase plays. He's somebody who can go sideline to sideline. He's got great closing speed is one thing I noticed. Whenever he's like right close to the play, he just has this ability to get this burst of speed to get to the ball. Good block shedder. He's got long arms, especially given that he's undersized. Like we're talking about a 291-pound 3-tech with 33 3/4-inch arms. He's got a strong upper body, even though he's undersized. And he has some genuine pass rush moves. There's a lot that I like about Norman-Lott. Now, obviously at 291, he's not going to be able to hold up in the middle. He doesn't have the size. He's probably got to continue to develop that pass rush game because he is undersized and he's got to find ways to make up for it. Not a bull rusher, probably not going to be able to start on a defense just because of his deficiencies against the run. But even against the run, it's like it's not really a matter of him being bad. He's just going to be inconsistent because he's more of a gap shooter than he is somebody who holds his ground. So he's fun. He's an overachieving 3-tech. I like these guys this year. I think he'll be a pain in the butt for offenses for years to come. I think he's going to be annoying to deal with because he's so good at shooting gaps and working all across the line of scrimmage. So I'd go like early third on him, honestly.
Yeah, he's a guy that is a lot of fun to watch. To your point on that, two really cool counter and pass rush moves in his bag. He's really good at catching wrists, doing the move where you catch the guy's wrists underneath the hands of him, you lift him up, and then you're able to kind of control the lineman that way, which is pretty cool about that. He's got another push-pull move he can kind of do. He even occasionally can bring out an outside stepping Euro step, start upfield, and then you outside Euro step it, and then you double hand swipe it off the outside Euro step. It's usually a move you typically see from the edges. But he was able to crank it up and bring that in at times to play. I don't think there's any doubt, Brendan, to your point on this, that he certainly can be effective as a pass rusher, and he can come in and at the very least give you rotational snaps in that way. But rotational is kind of also the key to me when I looked at him as a prospect because he was heavily rotated out through that Tennessee defense. And when you look at his snap counts for some of the other 3-techs in this draft, for a guy that doesn't lean back and you say, well, he was injured a lot, and that's why he doesn't have the overall snaps at the end of the year. They were trying to protect him, I think, when watching the tape there at Tennessee in the run game. I think that when you look at him down by the goal line, for instance, you'd see them rotate him out at the goal line at times. And that's to me a bit of an indicator when you're seeing a guy protected that much, so much by his team at the college level that they don't believe he can do it there. And if he can't do it there, then he ain't going to do it as a pro. I agree with what you say in the fact that, look, he's very smart and instinctual in the run game. And there's times we can get you really into the good spot on things with it. There's no doubt there. But it is a bit more into the heavy hit or miss territory of things with him. And I do have some big time concerns about him being able to hold up in that way where I just think that that's a deficiency potentially of his game as it stands. I did put him as a high 4th round pick, top of the 4th round for me, but that was the main reason why.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I just kind of felt like in this draft, I valued him up there, even though I'm aware of the limitations because, everything's relative, right? You just compare him to what else is out there.
Yep. No, it's completely fair, and I don't think we're too far off on him at the end of the day. And again, you're getting at least that floor with as a rotational pass rusher from the 3-tech bare minimum. He should come in and give you some kind of impact in that way from the jump.
Right.
Next guy up here for me in the 4th round is going to be Joshua Farmer, another Florida State 3-tech. What do we think about him?
Oh man, there is some stuff going on with Joshua Farmer that you do not find every day. 35-inch arms. 35-inch arms, that's going to get the scouts' attention alone.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember reading a story years ago about do you remember Corey Maggette in the NBA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Corey Maggette, when he was doing his tryouts, his agent had told him, look, whenever things aren't going so well for you, just take your shirt off and walk up by the scouts as much as you can, because he was built so well. He was just like, dude, just take off your shirt, show them how built you are, and nothing else is going to matter. That's what I feel like with this guy in his arms. When he's doing his pro day, if things aren't going so well, just make sure they see how long your arms are. Put them out there, stretch them out, and everything else will just take care of itself. So that is kind of the tale with him. Very long and uses that length really well to cause chaos in the middle, lands his punches firmly, has nice strong punches, really good at gobbling up blockers and swallowing them up and just not moving. He knows how to use leverage as well. He's not that tall. He's 6'3", and he knows how to get low. got some serious knockback power, but there are some negative things that come with that. He's kind of just somebody who plays between the hashes. He doesn't have lateral movement skills, not really quick, not really fast, not really going to be able to play over wide ranges of space. His shed skills are actually a little bit disappointing for his length. He can like win the engagement, but his stack and shed is not great. So it's almost like he's like a 3-tech, but then he's also like a nose tackle. It's a little bit confusing with this one for me. I don't totally know how to feel about it, but I think that with that length, I can't resist doing it in the 3rd round. I'll probably end up being disappointed by it, to be perfectly honest. He'll probably never live up to his 35-inch arms, but I'll take him in the 3rd round and try to figure it out. I feel like there's a lot to figure out here, though. I'm not sure where he ends up playing in the NFL yet.
Yeah, I think he is probably more 3-tech. I felt like he's got to be it's a little by Walter Nolan, where he's got to be allowed to just kind of one gap and get upfield a lot. That's where he's going to be at his best. The arms are impressive, and he's got very close to, I would say real pure power for the position that you would, not typically heavy hands if it were. I don't think he quite gets there, but when the wins happen, you can see it when he can knock them back. I mean, it looks brilliant when it happens. It's just that it's definitely a little bit of an up and down as far as the tape goes. It's a little bit of all or nothing factor with him. I feel like at times, Brendan, where it's he either gets there, he doesn't. And when he wins, it looks great. But when he doesn't, he's completely kind of neutralized and shut down. The note that you made about the lateral movement is also on my notes. I had it as a little delayed, a little slow. I think he does have good instincts and awareness. But I do think he kind of, rather than being technically brilliant, he gets by on being kind of a try hard. That's really where he leans into, where and that's not a bad thing. Just I'm going to play really hard and fast, and I'm just going to get after it. But you're not also being very cerebral in your approach. You're just being kind of a blunt force instrument in how you get off the ball and how you attack, to me, with him. And that just doesn't, I don't know if that brings a lot of consistency with it. 554th rated defensive tackle by PFF out of 762 defensive tackles last year. Also, I think a little bit noteworthy on the lack of productivity that you got from him, but solid motor, good instincts, good awareness. I think as a pass rusher, a little similar, but for different reasons to Omar, in that they can at least maybe give you some of that instantaneously. But I do wonder a little bit as him as a run defender long term, especially with some of what I would consider a little bit of his inability to do 1-2 gap really well.
Yeah, you are drafting him based off his traits rather than what he actually did on the football field. And you do that sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes you end up very disappointed.
Traits is a good way of putting it. And that's why I've got for me these 3 guys we'll be talking about the 3rd guy in a second that are all in this spot, where these are all at the top for me of 4th round guys, where it's like, I don't want to go for traits in the 3rd round. If I got traits, I'll go 4th round traits. I want a little more certainty the 2nd, 3rd round into day 2 on that. And that's why I've dropped these guys into this kind of place of things, because I do see them as that way. There's certainly no denying the traits, but it seems a little bit further away from quite locking to those traits than it is that they're right on the edge of just stepping over the precipice and realizing their potential in that way. So the 3rd guy on this that I have and I see in this way, Brendan, within the 4th round as well, who sort of fits as well into this. I mean, he's the poster boy for this in this draft, Brendan, the absolute poster boy for physical talents, but what you see on the field is not what you get. Deion Walker, the Kentucky 21-year-old.
Yeah. And in the case of Walker, I think it's kind of gotten to the point now where I'm not quite as comfortable betting on the traits as I would be even with a guy like Farmer. Really, really frustrating 2024. Really, really disappointing. Honestly, even though he's 330 pounds, like he's a big dude, and he's also one of the he was one of the tallest defensive tackles of the modern era, by the way. 6'7", long arms too, big hands. Despite all that, it's almost like he's better off playing outside than inside. It's like he actually did his best work when he was actually allowed to play almost like some monstrous 5-tech or something. It was weird, when they actually put him at nose tackle last year, because that's the big change they made from 2023 to 2024. It didn't work. It didn't go well. Now, let's be fair here. He's got insane physical gifts. He's inhumanly big and really long. He can move in space decently well, better than you would expect. He's slippery when it comes to working off blockers. But man, that 2024 was a big letdown. Wasn't nearly as effective playing inside. I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome his height. Like, he's just so tall. You have to get so low to try to win leverage, man. You have to get so low. It might be unreasonable to ask. He doesn't really have a lot of power, honestly. Like, he's got size, but he doesn't have as much power as you would like even either. And there's also the conditioning concern. Is he actually going to be able to play more than 20 snaps in a game? Like, even in Kentucky, it was a problem. Like, it's not going to get easier from here. So I don't know what his role is going to be in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be a nose. I don't know if he's going to be a 3-tech. I don't know if they're going to try to play him in some weird, like, big edge role. Like, I don't know if any of it's going to work, honestly. I think I'm a late third round on him at this point, and I'm even a little hesitant there. It's like you're drafting him purely based off his physical gifts rather than anything he's actually doing. And I feel like, unlike a guy like Farmer, I've seen enough to know that Walker's just never going to get to where you thought he could be before the season started.
I think it's a pretty accurate outlook of the player, Brendan, to me. He's just a wild kind of prospect. He's got pretty much one of the worst looking bodies I've ever seen on a defensive tackle, and that's saying something. He's got an ugly cottage cheese belly that shakes loose beneath the shirt of his untucked jersey. And I don't know if he's lifted a weight in his entire life by the looks of him. I mean, I joke, I'm sure he has, but he doesn't look it. This does not look like a hardworking kind of player out there. Like, he's busting butt in the weight room. It's just kind of like a guy that seems that's just born big, born long, and that's what he's going to get by on. And that scares me to death on a player that I'm going to go draft early on. I put him late in the 4th round. He's got a weird thing too, where it's like he wants to let the linemen get their hands on him first, so that then he can get his hands on them and try to then throw them away. And that works at the college level when you got the not as big guys and not as strong guys. But when you get to the pros, you're not going to be able to get away with that. Not really much of an understanding for leverage. I don't see him as a nose tackle at all. He's got to be used as a 3-tech to tap into whatever upside is going to be there. I think he's a guy that's probably got to lose about 35, 40 pounds. He's got to get into better shape to me. I'd really, by and large, probably would just want to try to avoid this guy because I do see him as a 3-tech anyway, but I don't like the thought of taking a prospect that I worry about with work ethic questions, especially if I'm going to be taking him somewhat early in the draft.
Yeah. He feels like that guy that comes around every now and then that is just 100% a traits pick.
Yeah.
And you deep down, he's not going to make it, but you can't resist. And maybe there is a point in the draft where the value becomes appropriate, but it's like deep down, you just know it's not happening.
Yeah. I feel that way about him. I do. I feel like most of these stories, these kind of guys that come out that way don't tend to realize that upside. They just don't. If they're that far away from it coming out of college, it ain't getting realized anytime soon. So you go late 3rd. I'm a late 4th on that one.
Yeah, I'm like late 3rd, early 4th.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep it moving here to another nose tackle, another guy to me that's a little bit underrated in this draft, quite frankly, in my opinion, Brendan. And that's going to be Nazir Stackhouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like your meat and potatoes nose tackle, right? Just very, very simple, very, very straightforward. He's got nose tackle size, arms a little bit short, but again, in this class, I can't even sweat it that much. There was something in the water 22 years ago, and it made all of our American children come out with like short arms or something. I don't know, but it feels like this class is just messed up in that regard. But anyway, been anchoring down that Georgia defense for a couple years here. A lot of experience in college, a lot of knockback power. He hits hard in the trenches. Really good at taking on double teams and holding his ground. He's well built. He looks like a nose tackle. I feel like he does need to learn how to sink his hips a little bit more. And I mean, the thing that really jumps out to you is that he's just kind of a slower player. He gets out of his stance slower. He's almost never getting to the quarterback. He has 9 pressures total over the last 2 seasons, and he's played a lot. So he's giving you very little as a pass rusher. So he's like that classic pure run stuffing nose tackle who can just plug the run, hold his ground, hold his gap. And he's still annoying to deal with if you're an offense. You're like, I really wish that guy wasn't there when I'm trying to run the ball right here. But, he's an early down defender only. can't be on the field for passing downs. So as long as you have the right expectations for him, I think you're going to get what you want. I think you're going to get what you need. I'd go like high 5th rounder, maybe even low 4th rounder. It's just all a matter of you have to have the right expectations for him. Don't put him in a situation where he's going to have to do something that he can't do.
Yeah, I see very much the same way with him. Pure nose tackle, heavy-footed. He's a guy that is going to be able to two-gap all day long, so fit to this defense. I was talking earlier about the fact you want your defensive lineman up front in this defense to really be controlling the blocks by and large, allowing those linebackers to run free. Stackhouse is going to definitely be able to do that for you, and he's going to demand those double teams as a nose tackle because he can overwhelm the single block. He's a guy to me, Brendan, that, he's not going to be a quick penetrator. He's not going to be a TFL machine. He's not going to give you anything as really the pass rush. But what he will do is give you that power that's just always making progress to the ball carrier or always making progress into the pocket. And it might take a little bit of time to get there at times in the way it is, but it's never that he's getting pushed the other way. He's never giving up ground. He's never getting the complete L on the play as far as the rep goes. So I feel like there's just a lot of solidity to him in what he brings on that side. He can occasionally pull the chair out from under the guy when they're really loading up for his power. He can throw guys around on the outside, especially when he gets into single block situations. He is just going to be a run defender for you, but in a draft where we've probably got 5-6 legitimate nose tackles, he gives you that as much of a purified skill as anybody outside of the first round here in that way. And to get that to me into what I would put him at is mid portions of the 4th round to the late 4th round, I think that'd be really good value to get, especially hitting a market that's very much a need at this point.
Yeah, I could definitely get behind it. Again, there's just a cap on what he can do. He's a early down player. He's a run down player. You know what you're getting. And I understand that even in this, we're still at a point now where pass rush is always going to be valued more than run defense. I understand that. Yeah. But there's something to be said for a player like this that, he could be what we were hoping Cam Young would be when we drafted him. Just somebody who's there for you when you need him, who can grind out the run defense reps, and that's it. And Cam Young hasn't been that guy because he can't stay healthy. And this guy, he's been healthy so far.
That's right. Way better player than Cam Young to me. I like the tape way better. And with Cam Young, even if he is healthy, we still don't know what he is as a player. When he was healthy in the little rare times, he didn't give you a whole hell of a lot from the position. So, we'll see on that. But I do like him a lot more, and I think he'd fill a need really quickly. And you get that in the 4th round, not too shabby, to be able to pull that off. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $2 donation. He says, I bet the over on our 7.5 win total Vegas had. Is that what Vegas has got us at again, is 7.5 wins?
That's what they had last year, right?
That's what they had last year, so they're going back at it again. So, hey, man, I told people last year to take that, and you would have won money if you took my recommendation last year for where they had it last year. So I might take that again this year. It's maybe a little more dodgy this year than ever, but it's an easy schedule, Brendan.
Yeah, that's the thing that would probably push me towards the over. I think it's going to be close, though. That might be a stay away. That might be a stay away bet, I think. I'm thinking about it. You don't have to bet on every single line, right? You find the lines that you like, the ones that you feel like you have an advantage on. I don't know if this is an advantage one. This might just be flat.
Well, it might be true. Sometimes Vegas gets it right, or most of the time gets it right on where they're evaluating this stuff. So, there's a reason the house tends to win, Brendan, right?
Right.
So the reason the house tends to win. But thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, good luck with that bet. Obviously, I'm hoping you win it. That'd be great for me.
Yeah, knock it out, man. I might join you on that bet eventually here, Jeffrey. I gotta give me a little bit. Let me see how the draft goes. I'll make my adjustment after that. All right, Nick.
Let me wait and make sure we don't get Jackson Dart in the
yeah, exactly. You're picking up what I'm putting down here, Brendan. You know what I mean? Let's just be careful on this one before we get to that side of it. All right, this is a guy that I'm going to be very interested to hear your opinion on a little bit. We might have talked about him already up until this point on other shows, but I can't remember us really speaking too much on him. And that's going to be, as I'm trying to find this stupid deal here, this is going to be Alfred Collins, the Texas 3 tech, by the way. I want this to be understood on this side of it really quickly before we get into anything on this player. A lot of people talking about him with a 3 tech position. And I went last night and went back and watched a couple more games last night of the guy. Not a nose tackle. So we need to throw all of that out the door when it comes to Alfred Collins. Not not a nose. I know he's got nose tackle size. I know he's 6'6". I know the 34, 69. Blah, 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 blah. They did not use him at Texas as a nose tackle. And this isn't Tavondre Sweat where he's used over at 3 tech and then they've got somebody else over, or like Ohio State. It's that he's not a nose tackle. He can't do it, Brendan. See if you disagree with me on this, but I just don't understand how people are coming to that because he didn't do it at college. And when asked to do it, didn't do it particularly well in the very, very rare moments that they actually kicked him into nose.
Right. Well, I mean, I can see why people have him there. And on the surface level, he definitely is. Right. It's you gotta. You poke around a little bit and you find out, it's probably not going to work out. But I can understand why people think that. Absolutely.
Based on size, I can, for sure. 6'6", 332, you'd think all day long especially those arms, that is a nose tackle.
Yeah. Although 6'6" is not actually that big of an advantage as a nose tackle sometimes. Sometimes you don't want to be 6'6".
True. Well, to your point, Grant 6'3", Tyleik Williams Jordan Phillips is 6'2", Jamari Caldwell is 6'1", to your point.
Right. Yeah, the perfect nose tackle would actually be like a dwarf from Warhammer 40K. Who's like, 5'1", but weighs 350 pounds, and he just goes around with a giant mallet, swinging it at people's kneecaps. That would be the perfect nose tackle.
100%. 100%.
You're not blocking that guy. He's just going to get under your pads and get you out of there every time.
Yep.
All right, so let's see here. He's got a build to die for, man. He really does. He's giant, long arms. I mean, coaches dream about guys like this. Absolutely. He can cover a surprising amount of ground for a big guy as well. They did show some stuff with him trying to become like a nose tackle type last year. Like you said, it didn't go great. It does make you wonder about what could happen, admittedly. I could see him playing multiple roles in the NFL. It's just that height is really a killer, man. He can't win leverage. He can't get low enough. It's like Deonte Walker because he just can't get underneath people. They get under his pads and it's over. He loses battles against guys who are clearly weaker than him. Doesn't really have a lot going on in his pass rush bag. His footwork isn't all that it can be. He's not really a playmaker. He doesn't really shoot gaps. He doesn't offer a lot in terms of like actually being the one to make the play. And generally just kind of inconsistent. So this is another pick where it's like you've got the traits and then you've got the production and you've got to choose which one are you going to value here? How much are you going to value each one? He's got the traits, but his production has been last year's PFF grade was really good, I guess. He did do some things right last year. I'm not completely dismissing him, but he's not a big producer. So I would probably go I think I'm like a 3rd round pick on him. This one's tough. I ended up going 3rd round on him, which I kind of felt like was like trying to sit on the fence a little bit because a lot of people have him in the 2nd. Actually, every major big board that I use has him in the 2nd. So I'm going to go 3rd. I didn't quite feel it the way they did, especially because I'm a little confused as to what he's actually going to be in the pros. But yeah.
That's where I stand with it too. And that's why I've knocked him down lower on my board into more 4th round territory. I agree with you that the consensus seems to be pushing him higher than anything at this point, but I kind of don't understand why. 3 sacks in the last 2 years, 1 sack this past year. So let's start up wherever you're lining him on the line of scrimmage. He's not getting you any pass rush ability. So you throw that out the door right out the gate. And that's the hard part to me to get into 3rd round, 2nd round territory is that if the guy doesn't have that, so I'm drafting a run defender. Okay. Well, but then I don't get the nose tackle side of that. All right. So I got a 3 tech, and then I got a guy that on early downs maybe occasionally can be kicked out into kind of a wide 9-ish, or not wide 9, but a 5 tech Red Bryant kind of role. They used him a little bit like that out at Texas at times. To your point on the versatility, you can maybe align him all over the defensive line a little bit in that way. But no pass rush. Really, he can be great as a run defender, pure there. I mean, he'll throw around single blocks all day long. I don't think he handles as well the double teams, and part of it's for the reason that you mentioned about the height. You get on the 1 block, and I'm controlling the 1 block, right? But he naturally is going to get up high. What happens when that 2nd block comes when you get up high? That 2nd block's getting right up under your rib cage, and it's sending you out onto Main Street. So that's why these guys have to be short and squatty, is because when that 2nd block comes along, they still have the leverage ability to win in there. And he can't do that. And that's why I'm so reticent to believe that he can handle there at the nose tackle position. Whereas when you put him at 3 tech, he's guaranteed to get the one-on-one. He just throws the guy away and goes find the ball carry, and it looks great. But doesn't have a lot. He gives you juice-wise, athleticism, explosiveness as far as a pass rusher goes. I just don't see really any upside there. And I come back to going, what's the value of a run defending 3-tech? I mean, and isn't that less valuable than a run defending 1-tech? Like a run defending 1-tech cannot have pass rush, and I'm okay with it. I guess what I'm trying to say, Brendan, see if you agree with this. I don't know if I can say that as much about the 3-tech who doesn't have that. Is that a fair outlook on it?
I mean, they have their place in the world, but you have to value it properly. It's kind of weird, right? It's like a wide receiver whose main skill is run blocking. Like, he has value, but okay, how are you really going to make that work?
Yeah, agreed. And I struggle with that word. He certainly will get on the football field. He will certainly find effectiveness as a football player. But if he can't do it as a pass rusher, I got to limit him down in the board for me and push him back just a little bit.
Right.
All right, next up will be the last nose tackle we're going to look at today. And this is a kid out of Iowa with a cool name, Black Yaya. Iowa State.
Is it Yaya Black or is it Black Yaya?
Maybe I've got it wrong. Is it Yaya Black? I don't know. I could have this wrong.
I thought it was.
That makes more sense. Yaha Black makes a lot more sense than Black Yaha. So
yeah,
Black Yaha is funner to say though.
Both names are cool though. I'm fine either way, man.
Yeah, I'm good with it either way. So, but what'd you think about Yaha?
I mean, wouldn't he do the Ichiro thing and just go by Yaya? He'd have a one name. He'd be a one name guy.
He should. That if there's any one name worthiness that you don't need the second name, even with Black as the second name, which is cool anyway. Like, that's badass. But just, they call me Yaha. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, could be like a James Bond villain henchman or something.
Seriously,
like
yeah. He's got some tool that he throws off and kills people with, and comes back and.
Another dream physical specimen, right? He's huge. He's got long arms, 35-inch arms, big hands. Had one of the all-time bad combines, but you know what? I feel like the combine is probably the least valuable for nose tackles compared to other positions. Like, I don't really care how fast the nose tackle can run a 40. I don't feel the need for my nose tackle to show that he can change directions really quickly. So whatever.
Agreed.
Not huge production for Iowa the last couple of years, but he's a nose tackle. He might be the biggest lineman in this whole draft, other than the Florida guy, the Watson guy, who's like 480 pounds. And I don't even know if he's going to get drafted. He might. I have a feeling he's going to have like blood clots or something that are immediately just going to end his career. I think that's not happening.
So whoever drafts him probably is going to try to get him to shed 100 pounds is what they'll probably end up trying to do. And then who knows what you got at that point. Yeah,
he's got a big advantage when engaging with linemen because of his length. He can beat double teams. He can just knock double teams out of this world. But he feels like he's a little out of control at times. He's very immobile, very little pass rush production. So he's mostly just a space eater. And again, that height does concern me. He's too high up, plays higher than everybody he's engaging with, and that's going to be a problem. So he's a pure nose tackle. He's a guy who can win. He's a guy who can win as a run stuffer as long as he can learn how to win leverage battles, learn some body control. I feel like there's a very low ceiling here, but the length is fun. So I'm gonna say late 5th round. I can't really go higher than that. I wanted to like this guy more than I did, but I'd still go like 5th round on him.
I think it's really fair. I have the late 4th round grade, but I wouldn't quibble with knocking him down to the 5th, because you're not much like with Collins, who's the 3-tech. This is a 1-tech. You're not getting pass rush. That's undoubted here with this guy. He's only going to be a run stuffer. I thought that there was a little bit of as well versus some of the other Jamari Caldwell or Jordan Phillips in this draft, Brendan. I did think that there was a little bit of hit or miss in how he dealt with those double teams. Sometimes he could be real stout, hold up at the point of attack. Other times he could get put on skates, I thought. But he does win the single blocks way more. I think he provides you a little versatility between the 3-tech and 1-tech too, even though he's a lack of explosiveness because the power is so legit. He's got the push-pull down move there as well for those offensive linemen that really, they hunker up on that power, and then you get him to kind of take the bait, and you can kind of use that. But labored get off, not a lot of athleticism, not a lot of lateral ability. just okay production when it's all said and done, even as a run defender to me on that side of it. But the tools that he's bringing in his bag with those long arms and the power that you feel from him and the size. I mean, 336 pounds is legitimate nose tackle size in addition to that. And you start to understand when these guys don't test as well, why. When they're carrying 336 pounds, it's part of why, Brendan, it makes it so impressive what Kenneth Grant did at 339 pounds, where you're like, damn, you're doing that at 339 pounds. But big old arms, big old hands, super strong. I feel like you're probably going to get some pretty decent run stuffing ability with this guy, bare minimum. And to get that late fourth, late fifth, I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It can't be wrong to take a gamble on a guy with some really unique traits that late in the draft.
No, I think that there's definitely something to be said for that.
And unlike somebody like a Deontay Walker, I feel like Black has a higher chance of at least finding a role in the NFL where he's good.
If you ask me who's going to be productive and has a guarantee of at least giving you some productivity, I'm a lot more there to your point on Black or Yaha than I am on Dion, to your point on that, 100%. All right, we'll keep it going. We got another donation here. Thank you, Sean Collins, for the $5 donation. Very kind of you, Sean. Hope you're having a great day out there. Appreciate it. He says, just move Anthony Bradford to the nose tackle position. He'd have pretty good nose tackle size, wouldn't he? He's like 6'5", 35-inch long arms, super athletic.
Yeah, and he's very athletic, like you said. Anthony Bradford might be the least popular Seahawk on the team right now. So I understand that people, talk about stuff like this, do this, do that with him. Everybody keep in mind, this guy barely played in college. This guy played 18 games in college or something. He was never going to be good in the first couple years. Let's let this play out a little bit is all I'm saying. Okay. All the talent in the world, maybe he never gets there. But I think it's too early to write his tombstone here.
Yeah, it's not put in there. I think the thing with him is that the sands of the hour are starting to wind down on him. When you're brought in as a 4th round guy, that's a real raw guy, and you're right. You give that guy some time, but you're moving into year 3 now. The development's not really come forward in him. The injuries have been kind of bumping up over and over again through the first 2 years as well in his time here, where he's had multiple injuries he's dealt with. And that's where you probably, in addition to this, you're starting to stack up the depth chart where there's a potential here with Bradford that he could be a man left without a home coming out the end of this draft. You go draft another right guard, Brendan, and there's a chance that he's a guy that's on the cutting block or trade block, wherever they want to put it with that. And I don't think it's likely to happen, but if the right guard, a Tate Ratledge, Lansdene, you love him and you grab him, you're not moving Bradford to left guard, I'll tell you that. And you've got Satoa there and you've got Christian Haynes there, and you're not keeping 5 right guards on the team at that point. So
right.
I think there's opening here still for him to have a chance, but it's his grip on this roster right now is tenuous. And this is kind of the make or break year for Bradford, where you either show it or you ain't got it. It's got to start coming forward here in a real major way this year. Yeah. Otherwise it's just how it goes with some guys, some guys just don't tap into that potential.
Yeah. But there's some fun upside here. Don't completely give up on him yet is all I'm saying. Let's see what happens this offseason.
No, don't give up him yet. We'll see what happens, and definitely a fit with his athleticism to this scheme. To your point on that, Brendan, as well. Maybe a really good fit to Kubiak's scheme for what it's going to ask him to do. Just let's get the whiffs off tape with him, right? A little bit less of the pure whiffs of just him standing there. He does that,
he has some really ugly reps. Again, it's not hard to figure out why a lot of Seahawks fans hate him. It's just understand that this was a guy who was not even close to a finished product.
100%. All right, let's keep it rolling here. We've got another 3-tech here. Some people in the Hawk fandom really like this guy a lot, Brendan. He's a guy that's caught a lot of people's eye out there. I'm not super big on him, like him. So I don't love him. But what do you think about Ty Robinson, Nebraska 3-tech?
Yeah, he's another one of these undersized 3-techs who tries really, really hard to overcome his obvious deficiencies. He's 288, but he's got great drive. He's got lateral quickness. He can shoot gaps really well. He launches out of his stance really fast and hard, uses his hands well. For a guy who's 288, he's pretty strong. He's a pretty good athlete as well. He tested really well. His explosiveness was out of the building. But he's got such an odd body type for an interior lineman, right? He's like 6'5", 288. Feels like he should be almost playing basketball at point or something like that. That's almost like you should be like a small forward or something. He doesn't really sink his hips either, so that's going to kill him in the NFL. I can tell you that. Also doesn't really have great length. He doesn't have the arms to really stack and shed blockers the way you would like. And I feel like a lot of his pass rush production is on stunts and twists. He doesn't actually have any straight up moves. So he'd be great on a team like the Rams, a team that loves to use their stunts and twists. But I don't know if I want him. Go ahead.
To your point, Brent, though they're different players, he's also cut from that Braden Fisk cloth, to your point, on my notes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So he's fun. Objectively speaking, I think he's like either a late third or early fourth. I don't think I'd want him onto the Seahawks. I don't think he fits what we're doing here. I just have there's little doubt in my mind that he'll be a productive pass rusher and gap shooter. I just don't think he'll be able to hold up from snap to snap. He's going to have to be somebody who rotates in pretty strongly.
Yeah, I think we mentioned about a few of these guys with arm length that I've pushed back on you against the time, saying like, well, not that you saw the arm length kick him in the butt, but you just mentioned maybe these will give these guys problems at the next level. This is a guy to me, when you mentioned the lack of arm length, who I felt on tape that lack of arm length was readily apparent, right? Like you could feel linemen able to get into him with their arm length and him struggling and him having to try to fight hard to get into their chest at times. So the arm length stuff wasn't going to be as much of an issue for him to me. And that's where you come back to that need of twisting and looping and, some of the comp I had back to Braden Fisk a little bit there where that's what he's got to do, because he's not just going to beat his guys straight up. That's not how he's wired to do it that way. High effort all the way. There's some shades to him at times, Brendan, in his game of kind of like a Zach Seiler almost a little bit, where a guy you can move around all over the defensive lineman, just very active, just always going 100 miles an hour, but also with that, not a guy that's, going to be technically brilliant or overcome you physically. Really, he's really getting by at times on sort of that high motor that's always revved hot and just trying to just kind of battle through to make it happen. But I didn't see many counters in his pass rush bag. Not able to use his arms or hands very much. Part of this is because he's just launching himself into that player. You did mention a little bit of the quickness off the snap, which does show up in the, like the broad jump, for instance. He's got 98 percentile, 911 broad jump. That's that quickness that you do feel. But that's where he uses that quickness to try to get in the chest because he's worried about the arm stuff. So it's almost like it's a good thing having the quickness, but then it just sends him into the guy's chest, and then it becomes kind of a dirty, mucked up thing where, he doesn't have a pass rush or some rip move or swim move. He's just getting into the chest, and it's all a bunch of busy work in there, is a little bit of what I felt with him.
Okay. I can definitely see that. I think that there is validity there. Again, these undersized 3-techs, there are a bunch of them in this draft. I ended up liking quite a few of them, but I think it is fair to wonder, how is this actually going to work in the NFL? How is this guy actually going to stand up from snap to snap and hold up?
Yeah. Well, and look, the Rams found, I love your reference on the Rams, by the way, with that, because it's literally in my notes. Though there are different players. I had Braden Fisk in my notes, not because I comped him Braden Fisk as much as I saw the same thing you did of, you should go, it's like, you see some receivers sometimes where you're like, that's a Green Bay Packer receiver. And now I'm starting to feel like these, a little bit of the undersized defensive linemen the Rams rock with that are sort of a lot of 3-techs, like that do the looping and switch, like, that's a Rams defensive lineman. That's kind of how I felt looking at him too.
Right.
All right, well, let's move to the final guy on our list today, which will be another guy a lot of people are actually very high on. I turned on the tape and I don't get it, Brendan. I don't get it. I've also seen this guy literally punch a man in his nuts on the football field. So he's got a little bit of some dirty element to him as well. Go check out that clip, folks, if you get a chance. Just he does the move. It ain't just kind of like, Brendan, it ain't just this, It ain't just coming in. Look, he ain't just doing this. Mm-hmm. He does the full meal deal. Like it's coming all the way up when he hits that thing into the sack, dude. He rolled that thing he long armed it all the way up through. It's the reverse windmill right up into the sack of the dude. So he's got a little bit of, he plays with an edge. Let's call it that. He plays with a real edge. Shamar Turner, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, dude. Just NFL players all over the defensive lines.
Yeah. Texas A&M has 2 defensive linemen named Shamar this year, which is kind of confusing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, there was actually at one point where I searched for one and the other came up, and I didn't even realize it until I was halfway through my evaluation, which was annoying.
They tricked me a little on that one early on too. I had a little bit of the same thing where I was like, wait, what? Turner, there's a Stewart, and then there's okay. Even the last names, Turner to Stewart's kind of phonetically similar.
Yeah. I got to be honest. I really liked what I saw from Shamar Turner as well.
Okay.
I actually ended up putting him in around the second round, so I get it.
Ooh,
I
okay.
actually kind of feel this one. Another one of these undersized 3 techs, and I understand that these guys are all over the place in this draft. But this one I liked more than the others. He's got more length than the others. He's shorter than the others, which I think is going to work to his benefit. He works very, very hard. He plays with a ferocity that, by the way, sometimes does lead to him picking up penalties because he's like going at a million miles an hour. But he's really good at shooting gaps to make plays in the backfield. He rockets out of his stance into contact with great violence. He's always working. He's always trying to make plays on second and third effort. Powerful hands. They land with big pop, and he's a pretty good athlete as well. So I feel like this guy's just going to be really, really annoying to deal with. Obviously he's undersized. So I don't know if I'd want a team like the Seahawks to get him because, again, it just doesn't really work with what we're trying to do, I suspect. And I feel like he doesn't fully utilize his arm length when he's engaged. Now, that is something that I think is fixable. And he's also over-aggressive. That may not be fixable. Him being over-aggressive seems to just be kind of part of the package because he does play with his hair on fire. But I think he's a really fun, undersized interior lineman, finds really creative ways to wreak havoc. And I don't know, sometimes I kind of felt like this guy could be like an oversized edge rusher. So he grew on me. I'd say second round. I like him a lot.
Your final point, that's really an important one for me on this. And this is maybe our kind of coolest parts, our final prospect, and maybe the one that we're as different on as any of these defensive tackles that we've covered so far, because I think we've been in alignment on a lot of them, Brendan. I see him as a man caught in between with nowhere to go, a tweener. Early in his college career, to your point, he'd up most of his snaps as a power edge on rundowns. Well, then he'd be occasionally kicked inside on some downs at times. And he found success as a pass rusher in that role. Then this past season, they used him inside, and he was less effective as a player. So they tried him everywhere from 3-tech to 0-tech, wasn't working. He went 18 hurries, 2 sacks, and that's from the previous year where he had 26 hurries and 5 sacks. So once you moved him inside, less effective. And I think that's a very important part with him because you come back to that power edge role, and I think that's where the flies in the ointment on this one. Tackle numbers also dropped last year when he went inside from off the edge. I think he's got a labored get off. I'm not totally sure if it's a lack of explosion or he just can't time the snap count, but he is always the slowest guy off the line of scrimmage wherever he's lined up and much of the time. He does have active, forceful hands. He's definitely a dog in there and how he'll fight. He'll give you a good hustle. But I think he's better suited, Brendan, to be a power edge than he is to be a 3-tech. I think that's where you've got to put him at and align him out at. And for that reason, I just don't have him as up there as much with it. Don't see him as being especially a 2-gapper inside. You ask him a 3-tech to 2 gaps, like no way do I see him being able to do that inside. I think he's getting blown off the ball if you ask him to do that. First, just attack, get upfield. That's what you're going to ask him to do.
Do you think he could end up being like a Michael Bennett type, somebody who plays like 5-tech and then slides inside on passing downs?
I mean, it could be the 2 places that he's missing, and they're both 2 Texas A&M players, but the 2 things there's 3 real places that stand out at Michael Bennett different. Number one, Michael Bennett's first step quickness coming out of college was really nice and probably should have been enough to get him drafted, quite frankly. I don't know why it wasn't, but his first step quickness stood out. Hand usage and pass rush moves. Obviously with Michael, he continued to get better through his time in the pros with that, but he had some of that already initially walking in. This guy's more of, I'm going to try to bully you and throw you around a little bit. That's coming from that power edge role where he tends to be bigger than the tackle across from him. So he can kind of manhandle that guy a little bit. But then when you kick him inside, he can't lean on the manhandle stuff as much. He can't just be the brute. And he's got to be more technically gifted inside at that point to get by. And he doesn't have it. And that's where, to me, with the Michael side, you're right about, does he have the versatility on bing, bang, boom, inside, outside, and being kicked around a lot? Yeah. And does he have a similar kind of body style to Michael? Yeah, he does. But that's where I get a little bit to where I can't get to that comp on it because I go, yeah, but he doesn't have that quickness. Yeah, he doesn't have the hand usage, doesn't understand leverage quite to the degree that Michael could, where he was a leverage winner every single time. But I'm also this is one of those guys I'm a little bit, I will admit, it's a little bit like the Nolan thing where I tend to be, there's some of these select guys that you're just a little bit more quiet on than other people are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jack Sawyer's that guy for me as an edge, for instance. He's kind of that guy versus where other people have him at.
Yeah, we're all going to have players like that. We're all going to have players 100%. We don't get. We're going to have players we get more than most people. I mean, that's the nature of the draft evaluation stuff.
100%. 100%. Hold on, Kitty. We're almost done here. We got one more here. Final donation here from Kevin Mullen. Thank you for the $10 dono, Kevin. I, for one, want Shamar Turner. Let me say this right, Kevin. I, for one, want Shamar Turner for our missing and much-needed nose tackle. Question. I'm not feeling tight end at 18. Seattle has never used a tight end since Jeremy Stevens. Tell me why tight end at 18 and not late third. Much love to you both.
It's all about the Kubiak offense, right? He likes tight ends. And I think if you get the right tight end in here, you are going to get tremendous results out of him in this offense. I think that's all there is to say about it.
Yeah, Kevin, it's when you look at the going back to Jeremy Stevens, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned Jeremy Stevens because the last time that you ran a West Coast offense was when? Mike Holmgren. Back there in back when you had Jeremy Stevens here and you were utilizing the tight end, and we're now going back to the West Coast offense for the first time since that. And to Brendan's point, that does mean you're going to now use that tight end similarly to what you've used it. Likewise, one of the reasons that we make this joke on my channel about renaming Brock Bowers Block Bowers because he's got Coach Carroll there, and we know Coach Carroll's not a big targeter of tight ends.
Yeah, but Chip Kelly might be the one with the car keys there. We'll see.
He might be the one but I will say with Chip, who's been the prolific tight ends out of Chip Kelly's offense?
Yeah, that is true. But you work with you dance with the girl you brought. He doesn't have great receivers there in Oakland, or
true.
Excuse me. I'll figure it out. It's Vegas, of course.
I do the same things.
Yeah, you dance with the girl you brought, and you don't have very good receivers there. So
yeah, I see him. They'll utilize him one way. It's more of a joke with the Bowers thing. They'll find a way. They're not going to just bail out that guy after the rookie year, he had.
If Pete Carroll turns Brock Bowers into a blocking tight end, it's on site. It's on site with him, I swear. He's my favorite non-Seahawk in the league right now, I think. I love him. He's awesome.
A great player. Oh, he's a great player, man. I agree. Yeah. I agree. And not really the blocker as well is not the big part of his game. So it's not even where you can go, well, he's such a good blocker though. You're drawn to want to have him do. No, have him pass catch. That's what the guy does on the side. And Kevin, I think Brendan feels a little bit differently when it comes to the two tight ends we're talking about at 18, because it's two guys we're talking about at 18. You're either talking about Warren or you're talking about Colston Loveland. I am a guy, and from my perspective, that has a second round grade on both those guys. So taking them in the first round doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's not really about us utilizing in recent history, because I think whoever we take, we would utilize because given nature of this offense. But I do have my grades where I have them, and that means I wouldn't want to take them in the first round on it. But I do think maybe Brendan might feel a little bit differently, especially when it comes to Warren.
I do think Warren is a top 15 prospect in this draft, so I would be happy taking him at 18. Loveland, I wouldn't hate it, but I'm not a big fan of that either. To me, if I'm going to be spending the 18th pick on a tight end, I want him to at least be an average blocker, and Loveland is like the Jawan Johnson of this draft, where he doesn't block at all. He's basically a receiver out there. He may as well be. Yeah, I just think Loveland's definitely getting a little overhyped here to me, Brendan, and a lot of people are connecting him to Seattle. A lot of people are pushing him to that, and for me, I just think it's too early. And I agree with you on the blocking side. I don't trust him as a blocker necessarily. And if you're taking a guy in the first round, you want to be able to at least trust in that. I know I'm getting that with Warren. I know he'll block. I don't think he's Gronk-like blocker, but he's a passable blocker for the position. Oh yeah.
But Loveland's a little bit of a different tale there, and I'm a little concerned on that one. Shamar Turner, I'm not sure he can do the nose tackle stuff there, Kevin. I think that it's just, and they tried to do that this last year with him on the tape, and those snaps just weren't particularly good.
I think he's making a joke there. The nut tackle.
The nut tackle. Okay. All right. I like the nut tackle. Yeah. Okay. I like that. And dude, folks, go check it out. You'll never go see a more blatant, dirty nut shot on the field, because most of the time they're in the pile and somebody's grabbing and twisting something, right? And he comes up, the guy's standing tall, and he just brings that sucker from the back of Maryland all the way up through Fresno. And I mean, he's got that thing solidly right up. The lineman's a badass, by the way, because the lineman just takes it. He just just doesn't even rattle his cage. Whereas with me, I'd be, 330-pound man with 35-inch long arms slams me in the sack. You're gonna pick me up in a couple of hours. You know what I mean? When I'm done crying and
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, remember Reggie Evans, basketball player who grabbed Chris Kamen's? Yeah, that was the famous one from when I was younger.
Oh yeah, Reggie played on the line. You know what I mean? Reggie played on the line. But that was one of those basketball players you needed back in the day. You needed one of those guys on your roster when they let him play physical who would get in there and could be that kind of dude. You know, that was whole Reggie's game. You know, he's a great rebounder, pretty good defensive player, and a little dirty. Just a smidge, just enough.
Yeah.
Just enough.
I think in 2006 there was a Monday Night Football game where the Seahawks were playing the Raiders. Somebody on the Raiders kicked Jeremy Stevens in the junk, and Stevens had no reaction whatsoever. And the Raider guy got kicked out of the game, but people were confused. They were like, "Hey, Jeremy, do you have anything down there? Like how did you no sell that, dude?" Like, I remember I was on a football discussion forum back then, and people were like, "How did he do that?"
Yeah, because as a guy, there'll be a lot of people who question your toughness about things, right? Like, get up, walk it off. But any guy gets knocked in the nuts, you're going, give him time. Give him a few minutes there. He needs some time here. Just let him get through that. He's got to breathe this out a bit, you know? So you're right. Lean into it, man. Get that penalty, you know? And I do vaguely remember that. Yeah, the guy got kicked out for that one. He kind of went wild on Jeremy. Like, Jeremy wasn't even doing anything crazy, if I remember correctly. The guy just like freaked out, had like a steroid moment or something on the field.
Yeah. I think Stevens was one of those guys that people just didn't like for some reason. And later on, we found out why, maybe.
Yeah. He had I'll tell you what, a guy with a reputation that I heard from so many people, like who went to school from him, and boy, not a guy with the greatest of rep locally speaking with people that went to school with him at that time. And I know he's a bit of a live wire too as an adult at times, but
yeah, there are people out there that the other players in the league just seem to hate, and it's not totally clear why. Like, it seems to me that the safety who was on the Eagles, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, he's a guy
for some reason people don't like him. I don't know why. Like, I don't know what happened, but nobody likes him.
Kirby Joseph, another guy, but that's because he's dirty.
Yeah, that one's easy to figure out.
Yeah, that one's an easy one to do the math on. But, thank you though, Kevin. Appreciate that $10 dono. I love the nut tackle. That's awesome. I love it. I missed that one, brother. That took me a second. Mickle Cam, thank you for the $5 donation, Mickle Cam. Love your guys' content. Two of the best. How do you guys feel about Ty Robinson? Where do you see him getting picked? Could he fit Mike's scheme?
Yeah, that was the guy we just talked about, the Nebraska guy, right?
Yeah. We just spoke on this one. But in short highlights, I think this is one where you might not get a lot of clarity from us on this one, Mickle, because both me and Brendan might have a little bit of a different outlook on him, just to a tiny degree on where we kind of see him a bit. I think Brendan's a little higher.
I'm a little bit higher on him, but I don't think he fits Mike's scheme, if that's the actual question. I don't think these undersized 3-techs that are meant to play in a scheme with a lot of twists and stunts, I don't think that's Mike.
I mean, that's the most important part of your Mickle Cam, is that it's not a need, and probably also doesn't fit to the type of guys, if it was a need for the position that Mike would be looking at, where he'd probably want a little bit more length and ability to two gap in there and control things at the point of attack. I think Ty's more of a guy that get up field, a guy that you can kind of move around the line a little bit in that way. The short arms are the big problem with him as much as anything, where you feel his short arms. There's short arm guys you don't feel. There's short arms you can really feel, where it's like, man, that lack of length is really hurting him, and he's having to get around it and work around it and have to be creative in how he works around it. We were kind of joking a little bit, Mickle Cam, that maybe the best place for him to go, and not joke, it's kind of serious, is that, really you look at these players that are kind of archetype players that fit to certain defensive schemes or certain teams. Ty seems to be a guy that would, to me, fit really well with a team like the Rams as sort of a backup to a Braden Fisk. And that he, fits into kind of that role. He would seem to fit much better to that than he would to more of the two gapping stuff, where you've got to kind of control things up around the line of scrimmage. But just a little bit of the lack of length with him. But fun player, works really hard. I mean, he's gonna give you the high motor stuff. It's gonna run red hot 24/7 on that side of it. Just I worry a little bit about him with that one gap to two gap stuff, because it's the centerpiece of this defense, and historically speaking, that those defensive linemen up front have got all the way along, by the way. That's why you have your power edges. What are the power edges doing? They're setting the edges. They're essentially two gapping. I'm going to press this out wide. You're not getting outside my shoulder. I'm forcing you back inside, and then I'll go back inside with it. So everybody out there is kind of doing a lot of sometimes they call it gap and a half, but it's really two gapping in what it is. I mean, gap and a half's this weird thing where they try to cut the difference between one gapping and two gapping, but it's basically two gapping and letting the linebackers go make plays. This is why when you look at the Hawks box score every week, you're looking at Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones with the most tackles. So the guy, that's the ideal. They're controlling up front. The linebackers are gobbling up the tackles, and that's the way this defense kind of works. And I'm not sure if Ty can be able to give you that up front.
Yeah. He's a gap shooter. He's somebody who needs to be working in the backfield and making the plays himself. I like him. I like him a little more than you do, but I don't see the fit.
Yeah, I've got more of a late 4th round range, partly because of what Brendan just said, Mickelcam, where I don't see as much of the fit to the defense, not because he can't be a good player in the right kind of defense. Brendan's got him, I think, more up in the.
I had him in like the late 3rd, early 4th.
There we go. So we're pretty close in general terms on him, and I don't want to undersell. He's not a bad player, just maybe not quite the fit to this scheme that we'd be looking for.
Yeah. Before we end this show, can I ask you real quick about a couple of players that we didn't include that I did actually think a little bit more of than you seem to?
Sure.
JJ Pegues, the Ole Miss guy, the like nose tackle / fullback. Did you not feel it with him?
Yeah, I think that what we got to first do is let's differentiate the fullback side of it. If we're drafting this guy, we're looking at him first and foremost for what he is as a nose tackle.
Right.
And so I see him as more of a wide body 3-tech who's a bit of a tweener to me. Neither a nose tackle, neither a 3-tech, kind of a man without a home. 3-year starter for Ole Miss, 10 sacks, 52 hurries over a 3-year period. Good squatty, low build, like that about him. Only 8% of his snaps were technically from the nose tackle position. Part of why I say that he should be a 3-tech. So very, very infrequently used. Double teams can push him around. Engine runs hot and cold. I wouldn't call him high motor. Pass trying to use his quick hands on contact. He doesn't offer very many pass rush moves except for a spin move that he engages as a secondary. And it's actually kind of effective, but it's kind of all he's got. So it's, if there's a part of this we want to include to him as a fullback, because I know he's had fullback success, you can kind of lend and bend that in. But I just think he's a guy that's just trying to put his head down and knock over the bowling pins. And he's trying to do that mainly from the 3-tech position as opposed to the 1-tech. So we get back to, is he as a 1-gapper, it's a 2-gapper? How good is he as a 2-gapper? How good is he as a 2-gapper in the nose tackle role? I come out of that and I was low all the way around on him on that on the other side.
Okay. All right. I can see that. He's kind of one of the gimmick players of this draft, I feel like, because he also does the fullback stuff.
Yeah.
I liked him a little bit more than that, but I feel, one other guy, Vernon Broughton of Texas, the guy with the 35-inch arms. Have you looked at him at all?
Did not have a chance to get to him. That was one guy that I didn't have quite a chance to look at. You like him?
He's fun, man. He's got the 35-inch arms. He's tall. He's pretty big. He's a good athlete, launches out of his stance quickly. He's got some legitimate moves that he can use. He's just a little out of control, honestly. He's just a little bit plays a little crazy. And he doesn't move that well. So outside zone runs, I think Shanahan would probably have a lot of fun against him, for example.
3-tech?
Yeah, I look at him as more of a 3-tech right now. But again, sometimes these things aren't completely defined until we get to the NFL. One thing I want to say to the audience is that sometimes you just don't know where a guy's going to be able to play until they actually get out there and start playing it. Sometimes these things surprise you. I don't think the Seahawks ever thought Justin Britt would end up being their center when they drafted him and put him at right tackle. It's just one of those things.
It can develop in that way. You're absolutely right about that. Sometimes guys can transition.
He just hasn't been that productive yet. He had 1 year of good production last year and it wasn't great. So tantalizing traits, but it just hasn't come to bear yet. So that would be the other guy that I'm kind of intrigued by.
Okay.
Other than that, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah, we got there's a CJ West, another nose tackle at Indiana. Didn't cover him because he's more of a guy just can't really not really a 2-gap guy, more a guy that because he's undersized and lack of arm length has just got to kind of shoot his way upfield to get to where he goes. And then other than that, you just have a bunch of 3-techs kind of all locked in there. Darrell Jackson Jr., we didn't talk about, the son of former Darrell Jackson, wide receiver for the Hawks. Big old man, monstrous sized dude. Oh, yeah. But I've got him in the 5th round, and we just wanted kind of more folks concentrate on these guys inside the first 4 rounds because just thought this will be more interesting, get a little bit more deep dive into the prime prospects, so to speak, in the draft. Because these guys in the back end are on the back end for a reason, kind of.
Right.
In the outlook of it.
Some of them are still fun, though, like Howard Cross, the really undersized nose tackle at Notre Dame. I don't think he'll do anything in the NFL, but he's still fun. Playing nose tackle at 290 pounds, it's kind of entertaining to watch.
No, it is. It's like that. It's like that guard out at North Carolina.
The guy who's probably going to end up playing fullback in the NFL.
yeah, Willie Lampkin, man. It's like it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't work. It's literally like you create that Madden offensive lineman that you make 5'9", and then, but you put all his skills up as far as his ability rating, and it does not look right, but the game lets you get away with it, and you're just kind of having fun.
Yeah, he's testing my theory that the Warhammer Dwarf would be the best.
I'm telling you, you're onto something with this Warhammer Dwarf stuff, man. I'm telling you, that's the new nose tackle hotness is the Warhammer Dwarf. That'd be a great YouTube title for a nose tackle video, Brendan. The Warhammer Dwarf. You got the big axe over his shoulder, especially with Gronk now, we can create these things. So I have to do that. Well, folks, we're going to keep this rolling through here over the next couple of weeks. So strap on in, because me and Brendan are going to be planning on doing 2-3 shows a week here on one to get in and deep dive into this draft. We're going to come back on Thursday, be looking at the running backs. Again, the look on this is going to be try to kind of keep it in the first 4 rounds and keep it at the top of the guys. We got about 15, 16 guys that we're going to be looking at really closely here on Thursday. And then next week, I think we got 3 shows set up. So keep an eye on your notifications on either side of it. If you're on Seahawks, Brendan Nelson right now, hit that like button if you can. Makes this show up on the algorithm, lets people see who are looking for good draft coverage. If you're on Hawks Nest, please do the same. And if you're not subbed up to either side, get subbed up to both sides if you can for us as we continue to do these shows throughout the year and go hot, certainly during the season. So, Brendan, I appreciate you doing this with me today. I look forward to Thursday and looking at some of the running backs. I know it's not a need, but you have, I think, is just to give a little bit of a preview on this. I think you'd agree, maybe the deepest running back class that we've seen in about 10 years. Do I dare go 20 years? Do you have a deeper one to mind that you've had to on?
Yeah, it's at least a little annoying that we have this running back class in a year where we don't need one. I'll tell you.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you need a receiver in a draft, which isn't exactly strongest for wide receiver. At least the interior linemen are good, though. At least we got some good quality interior linemen to pick through.
Yeah. As long as you're willing to take the tackle converts.
True. That part is true. There is a caveat, with that one. But
I don't think the receivers are bad. It's just a lot of them are slot only guys. Is the frustrating part more than that.
Yeah, and you don't have as much of the pure blue chip guys. You usually got 2 or 3 blue chippers in the draft too, and you're kind of missing the pure blue chip guys on it too. But yeah, there's some interesting guys. There's definitely some fun receivers to go through. And like you said, it is very weighted heavily to the slots. A lot of slot receivers in this draft, or that's where they're going to at least live in the next level. Well, we will be back in less than 48 hours here with a running back preview. Fun running backs, a lot of different running backs, very explosive, creative guys, juke, spin dudes, super young, a ton of potential to them. So we're going to be going into that here on to Thursday. I thank you guys for watching today. Appreciate all of the donations here to the chat as well. Thank you, Brendan, for doing this with me. As I love this part of the year when we get to go into this, just a whole different kind of outlook to football versus getting caught into some of the day-to-day stuff with just the team itself. So it's a fun little part to go into on this. I appreciate you doing this.
Yep. Thank you for having me on, man. We'll be continuing to do it until there's no more prospects to talk about.
So there's no more to prospects to talk about. And both me and Brendan will be streaming on our channels individually live on draft day and we'll be doing some late night shows as well. So be prepped up this month as we're going to be coming in hot, folks. Really appreciate you watching today. If you could, again, hit that like button, maybe sub on up if you get a chance. We will be back soon, but until that time, please don't you ever forget we're about to kill this draft. We got 5 picks in the top 100. You better be getting hyped because we're about to go crush it as a team and put this team back over the top and set the stage for a contention whenever that will fully then click in. So you better believe we're about ready to make some noise, Seahawks fans. So don't you ever forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.